with me from Washington, D.C. And I looked across the table at my African brothers and sisters. I could see intimidation on their faces. They didn't believe they had anything to offer the great-great-grandchildren of Mungo Park. They just sat and watched and, just give us, let us sign. You own the knowledge, you know it all. Just, where do we sign? Show us, let us sign. They couldn't even, they had no voice. They didn't believe in themselves. And so it was Mwalimu Julius Nyerere, former president of Tanzania, who said that you cannot develop people. People will have to develop themselves. I agree with Mwalimu. I am convinced that Africa's further transformation, Africa's advancement, rests simply in the acknowledgement, validation, and mainstreaming of Africa's own traditional, authentic, original, indigenous knowledge in education, in research, in policymaking, and across sectors. Founder of the South African Choral Group, Lady Smith Black Mambazo, he said that the task ahead of us can never, ever be greater than the power within us. We can do it. We can unlearn looking down on ourselves. We can learn to place value on our reality and our knowledge.
You're listening to The Talking Point. Welcome to the show. You see what Zalma did there? She switched on my mic while I was still busy agreeing and engrossed in what is being said. I'm like, yes, I agree 100%. We have to be the ones who develop ourselves, and development, of course, happens on multiple levels, but absolutely on a personal level, we have to take responsibility for our own development. And, also this culture of reliance. I heard a statement sometime in the last month, and it's really an idea of the levels of entitlement that sometimes exist in our society, that we've created a culture where people expect things to be done for them. So, you expect to receive free electricity, you expect to receive free housing, you expect all of these things to sort of find you wherever you are. And whether that has been a function of the post-democratic era and some of the commitments made to people at the onset of our democracy, the reality now is that you have a lot of people that sit back and think things will be done for them. But that is not the case. We've got to be able to get up and be equal contributors in building this country and realizing the full potential of what it can be. And the culture of entitlement, that things should be given, it's just not how the world works. And where there are opportunities and doors are opened, you have to go in there, take it full steam, take it with both hands. Don't let any opportunity go to waste. So I agree with Dr. Chika Eziana Isibo, who is a professional, a college professor, and both an author in the fiction and non-fiction categories. Welcome to the show. I'm Cathy Mohlahlana, and looking forward to being in your company as we always do until midday. Coming up in the first hour of the show, of course, it's the open line. I'll be taking your calls. You get to set the agenda on The Talking Point. So I'll take your calls on 086 000 2032, 086 000 2032, on the WhatsApp voice note line 0614 104 107. That's the number to dial. In the second hour of the show, it is a Tuesday, so we're talking finance with Brian Hirsch. We're going to be focusing specifically on the issue of wills. This is National Wills Week. And we'll be unpacking then the importance of a will. And I don't know why it's so difficult for us to draw up wills. So many of us don't have wills, and I'm willing to put my head on the chopping block because that's what Brian tells me. He tells me that we just ignore having wills. You see, my technical director, Zalma, she's hiding her face behind the computer because she doesn't have a will either. Can we please, Kanya, do you have a will? Kanya is our producer. Kanya, are you telling the truth, Kanya? Kanya is nodding her head. She says she does have a will. Lebo, do you have a will? Let's find out. Does Lebo have a will? Do you have a will, Lebo? Lebo doesn't have a will. So, and Zelma is asking if I have a will. Well, Zelma, it's a work in progress. There's a draft sitting somewhere. But Brian, of course, is going to whip us all into shape when it comes to wills and making sure that our affairs are in order. Why? Because we don't want to leave chaos, When you don't leave a will, it does create chaos, unfortunately, sometimes when you pass away. And that is chaos that often creates lots of divisions in families. So we'll be looking at that issue in the second hour of the show. The final hour, we're going to be unpacking some of the challenges that have come up in terms of the teaching assistants across the country. So there seem to be issues around the disbursement of funds for this particular program, which we know has been lauded in providing employment opportunities for young people. It has gone a long way in alleviating, the poverty that these young people often faced because they just didn't have jobs. But there are issues now with that budget. It was supposed to be extended, but it does, however, seem that there are issues with how it's going to go on now. There are budgetary issues, so the program is in limbo, and the teaching assistants themselves are unclear about what the status of this project then is. So we'll take a look at that conversation in the final hour of the show. We'll speak to the groups, particularly that have been dealing with young people in these jobs, and then we'll also be joined by the Acting Director General of Employment and Labour. You're listening to The Talking Point. It is your open line. I'm taking your calls 086 000 2032. That's the number to dial, 086 000 2032. On the WhatsApp voice note line 0614 104 107.
The wait is finally over, and we can safely say that Tropica Island of Treasure is back to serve you some really great entertainment. Tune into S3 from the 28th of September to cheer on the 7 teams who will be vying to win a shared prize of 1 million rand, a brand new car each, and become the champions of Tropica Island of Treasure Season 11. Fancy 50,000 bucks? Predict the champions of Tropica Island of Treasure, and you might be sipping that cold, refreshing Tropica all the way to the bank. Follow at MyTropica and at SABC3 for more information. Channel your inner champion with Tropica Island of Treasure. Starts Saturday the 28th of September at 6:30 p.m. only on S3. Open up.
Here's what real clients say about OUTsurance. Here's Fundi, 46 from Brackenfell.
They give me lesser amount for my car. 523 rand on my 2013 Hyundai iX35.
Monica, 39 from Three Rivers, pays just 1,515 rand a month for her 2018 BMW 320i.
Give OUTsurance a call. You can't lose.
SMS out to 30754 now. That's out to 30754. OUTsurance is a licensed insurer and FSP. T's and C's online.
Weeknights on S3 are anything but ordinary. BBC Primetime brings you the best of British television from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. You love drama? Then step into the world of Luther as he cracks down on criminals terrorizing the streets of London Monday to Wednesdays at 9 p.m. Top Gear will have you falling in love and rolling in laughter as Jeremy Clarkson and his team take you on an automotive journey like no other, Monday to Wednesdays at 10 p.m. Channel your best entertainment with BBC Primetime, only on S3. Open up.
Call us on 086 000 2032.
All right, you're listening to the open line. Sfiso, you're in Vryheid. Good morning.
Morning, Kathy, and morning,
Yes.
listeners. How are you, my good sister?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Yes, we are the ones who have to develop ourselves. It is true. We as the community, as Makwatas, Vryheid, under the Kolusi municipality, we have been trying to develop ourselves. But the unfortunate part in Africa is that we don't have, not to say that the statement is inclusive, leaders who understand to say, if this is the situation, this is what is expected of me. You can write good letters to the leadership, but if they want to listen, they will listen to you, provided you give them something. If we all can adopt that attitude and culture to say, we can develop ourselves. Africa and South Africa, to be specific, will be a better place to live in, because there's a community there at Friday, Emakwatas, they call it like that, under what age. That community have tried to reason with the municipality to say, this is the situation we find ourselves in, since we are renting to Transnet, but we want to develop this place. They've written so many letters to different ministers, different MSCs, but nothing is happening because nobody is giving something to those in command. So if we can adopt that culture to say we can develop ourselves, even our township will be on another level. But the thing is, those who are supposed to listen and do something, yes, they don't believe that we can do it ourselves. They look at the big bribe, who's giving me the big share, who's giving me what. So I thank you so much for that.
Sfiso, I think one of the most unfortunate things about our society today is the way in which corruption has become so embedded in the way that we do things that it even impedes opportunities for development. So if you are part of a community and the community is coming together and saying, we want to do this, these are the resources that we've been able to put together. As a decision maker, your job should be to support that and to want to facilitate that happening, with everything that you can. Not to see how much you can take from whatever little that they've been able to put together. It's just so short-sighted, incredibly short-sighted.
It's true, Kitty, because if you can see in South Africa, to be specific, we have so many people who have written so many good books and so many good letters, but they don't receive support from those in command because they don't have anything to benefit as individuals. We need to change that attitude and way of thinking to say, we can do it ourselves. If I can listen to you, I can make whatever you are pitching to me better, regardless of saying who's watching. I don't need cameras. I don't need somebody to say, okay, I'll give you the certain share. It's up to me. It's the attitude that I need to uphold within myself to say, this is the Africa I wish to see, not to say I'm expecting anything out of it. So I'm deeply touched as somebody who has been part of the community, who have tried to reason with Transnet, who have tried to reason with Abakolosi municipality, but none of them are willing to understand and concur with the community. Bear in mind, Katie, that the houses I'm talking about are built on asbestos. So it's something else, but none of them are moved or touched by the letters we have written to them since 1993 because they have nothing to gain out of that.
Yeah, it's incredibly unfortunate, Sfiso, and it is a culture that we have to think about as individuals, and we just have to think about it we have to think about why that kind of mentality prevails. All right, Sfiso, let's leave it there. Happy you're out in Centurion. Good morning.
Okay,
yes.
Kitty, I'm staying here in Centurion. My dear friend is in Lodium, inland water tank there in Lodium. It's an informal settlement. They are being supplied water by Tshwane. I think it's water tankers. Those people who are supplying water tankers, they are no longer supplying water tankers. They want money from them so that they can supply water to their tankers. They are charging them 100 rand to 500 rand. 100 rand so that they can supply once a day, and then 500 rand so that they can supply them water every week. Then these people now, they are suffering. They are walking something like kilometers to go to get water, just because some of them, they don't have money to pay these people who are supplying them with water.
Okay, so the municipality is the one supplying the water tankers. I'm assuming it's the city of Tshwane, hey?
Yes.
Lodium falls under Tshwane, yeah. So the city of Tshwane is providing the water tankers. Now, the suppliers of these water tankers, which we assume are being paid by the city, are now also demanding that residents should pay them before they get water.
Yeah, that's true, Kitty.
And have the people tried to raise this with their ward councillors?
The ward councillors knows about it just because I think week before last, they did have got a meeting with the ward councillor.
Yeah.
And then, I think 2 weeks before, they did have got a meeting with the councillor. And then he promised that he would solve the problem. Then nothing is happening at all.
No, but that's just... Do you know the company, the name of the company?
No, I don't know the name of the company that is supplying water. I don't know the name of the company.
Yeah, okay. We'll have to follow up with the Tshwane municipality on this, because it's just a level of greed from these suppliers. They effectively double dipping, right? Because they're getting money from the municipality, and now they also want to get money from residents. So for the residents then that aren't paying for this water, what are they doing?
Nothing. Just because those who are paying water, they don't want them to go and fetch water from their tankers. Then they are buying water. Another van they are running around selling water to them. Then that's the only thing that they can do, buying water from those vans.
Okay, so clearly then there are other people that have come in to fill the gap.
Yeah, they're taking that opportunity just because now they know that people that don't have water, then they are selling water to them.
Okay, but Happy, just so that I understand, so the residents are refusing to buy the water from those that are being supplied by the ones responsible for the water tankers, but they're buying water from the other guys that are driving around in just your bakkies and vans with maybe water drums.
The problem is, there's these tankers that the municipality put in the area. Then for your tank, if you are next to that tank, for that tank to be filled with water, the people around that tank, they're supposed to collect money, sometimes put money together, let's say 500 rand, that's what they wanted for 5 days, so that they can put water in 5 days, once in a week. Then you pay 100 rand. Then some other people, they don't have that, maybe by the time when the people are collecting the money, they don't have money by that time. Meaning they cannot fetch water from that tank. Then when you have got that 5 rand, you will buy one bucket, maybe that time when you have got that 5 rand. Yes.
Okay. Look, Happy, I'm going to ask Lebo to take down your number, so that we're able to have a contact for when we actually reach out to the city of Tshwane, because this really shouldn't be happening, and clearly there's a lot of opportunism that is being created. Number one, those water tanks that are in the community should be refilled. But on the other hand, the fact that they're not being refilled is obviously also creating the opportunity for those that are selling water to residents. All right, it's 9:30. I'm back with more of your calls.
Good morning. In the headlines, the Basic Education Minister, Siviwe Kgakgobe, says the target is to completely eradicate pit latrines in schools by March 2025. The minister was accompanied by the Deputy Minister and Limpopo MEC for Education, visited schools in the province to assess the state of education. The National Union of Metal Workers NUMSA has urged management at BMW not to dismiss workers implicated in an ongoing fraud investigation. About 700 employees at BMW's Roslyn plant in Pretoria went on strike last week after being placed under investigation for medical aid fraud. And the executive mayor of the Nelson Mandela Bay Metro, Gary van Niekerk, says they've had several meetings with the ANC about a possible reshuffle in the metro. It comes after the ANC announced plans to establish an ANC-led governance in the metro. I'll have details on these and other stories at 10.
Ashopol is over 110 years old and was born out of the desire to serve South Africans who work hard to build this country from the ground up. With over 5 million lives covered and named Best Life Insurer by Forbes, Ashopol is here for you today and will be there for your family tomorrow. SMS SERVE to 44366 and we'll call you back. Ashopol is an insurer licensed to conduct life insurance business, an authorized financial services provider. FSP 53. T's and C's apply.
Africa Chibembe. As trees and flowers blossom, the nation gets brighter and excited for sporting action. Tune in to SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4 and SABC radio stations. Also available everywhere for everyone, always on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. SABC Sport celebrates the nation's diverse culture and heritage. Happy Heritage Month. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
Listen up, you could be paying too much for car insurance. Be like 56-year-old Quinton, who called Outsurance for a quote and pays just 660 Rand per month to insure his white 2023 Hyundai Venue Motion. Do you think you could find a great deal too? SMS out to 30754 and get an Outsurance quote today. That's out to 30754 now. Outsurance is a licensed insurer and FSP. T's and C's online.
Call us on 086 000 2032.
Morning, Cathy. Morning. On the issue of the waterkans being paid, yes, even here in KZN, you, as much as the water is issued by the municipality, you also pay like 500 Rand for them to come and fill maybe your Jojo tank, or for them to even just come by your house. Yeah, you pay for everything, even though it's already paid for in this country, unfortunately. Anonymous.
Morning, Cathy and the listeners. This is Magdalene from Bloom. Thank you very much, Cathy. Thank you for your input on the first caller, CJ. That definitely we, the South Africans, are trying very hard to can develop ourselves economically. The duty of the councillor is to earmark and to see that somebody is trying something, a group of people are trying something. How about we support them? Because there is that entity of business within municipalities. What is that MMC doing? What is that MMC doing? And what is the councillor doing in local? It's only to loot. That's what I'm going to say, because they're highly involved in these constructions, putting their own people as subcontractors. Magdalene from Bloom, thank you.
Cathy Dumela, Shakazana Izibo. Cathy, I slightly disagree with her when she say the government will not develop people, people must develop themselves. Not in South Africa, maybe somewhere else, not in South Africa. South Africa, all they know, you must pay bribe before you can get what you want. It's a fact. Skosana in Northern Ireland.
Good morning, Cathy, the speaker you've just quoted speaks about Africa as if it's just a country. What is even surprising, she talks of Africa and then South Africa as if South Africa is not within the continent of Africa. It's actually misleading, and in as much as she was meant to be encouraging, she herself, I think, looks down on the continent.
Hashtag SFM Talking Point.
All right, thank you for those WhatsApp voice notes. Yeah, look, Ndeba, I guess, sometimes it's about context, and maybe some of these clips are taken from very long speeches that people give. I was more trying to capture the essence and the individual agency that we as people have towards ourselves. Yes, there's a responsibility that government has towards its citizens, but we have a responsibility towards ourselves too, to develop ourselves, especially on a personal level. If there are opportunities to learn, how are we making use of those opportunities, and are we bringing our best selves to those opportunities, right? Calvin, you're in Benoni. Good morning.
Hi, good morning, Cathy. I wanted to be the first caller today on your show.
Oh, Calvin, I'm sorry. You see, if you want to be the first caller, what you must do is that you must start calling at 10 to 9. That way, Mdu is going to take your number and then he'll transfer it. He'll give Lebo a list and say, these are the people that called to be on your show. That's the only way to win, Calvin.
Okay, no, that's great. Thank you so much, Cathy. Yeah, listen, I just wanted to contribute as a loyal SAFM listener.
Sure.
And, the problem that I have is that we are not honest ourselves. Why? Because, so say for example, Cathy, I'm not employed and I go to the Department of Social Development, I apply for my grant for my 2 kids, and the application gets approved. 5 months down the line, I get employed and I get almost 50,000 rand a month, and I don't go back and say, listen, I can now afford my 2 kids. Please give my social grant to the next person who deserves it. Why can't we have that system that can able to drive the economy around? I mean, only the government employees are picked up to say, now you are employed, then you are taking your child out of the system because you can now afford. But when it comes to private sector, it's very difficult for the system to pick up that you are now employed and now you can able to maintain, even if it's 2 or even if it's 5 kids. So we are not honest ourselves.
What do you think is behind that, Calvin? Is it the folly of human nature that elements of greed coming in? Is it entitlement to that money? Why do you think we do that?
Firstly, there's an issue, like you have on your opening statement, you said people want to, they think that the government owes them whatever that is available should come to their space without contribution of the revenue. For example, I'm in Benoni, and I was very worried when I received a report that at least 3% of the households make payment of all these tax services and other rates that are required by the municipality, so that the municipality can be able to respond to issues of your water, your storage system. But that culture of non-payment, the culture of sitting back and say, I want this to be happening, I want this for free because so and so got it for free. So I think that is an element of culture. On the other hand, of course, the element of greediness is there as well.
Yeah, because Calvin, I'm also thinking about those employees of government who, I mean, social development has released multiple reports on that, but who put themselves on the system and who also want to benefit from the child grant, who want to benefit, even though they have jobs. And we've seen that in different departments. And yeah, it boggles the mind.
Yeah, because I think it's the issue of the system. I mean, why can't we have a system that says you are now employed? I mean, our technology has gone to a certain stage where it can able to pick up someone from UIF that you are now employed. Why should you then be paid if you are employed?
Yeah.
But even the system exists, but that does not happen. I mean, why should we have these money that is supposed to be given to those that cannot able to afford, and it's still remaining the ones that are waking up from 8 to 5 and get salaries, and someone else is not getting half a loaf because that somebody else is not getting anything. You have applied and your application has been denied, and it was rejected at the end. But why? But my worry is that why are we not honest to ourselves?
Okay. All right. Calvin, thanks for that contribution. And in fact, I think it's part of the reason why there was a delay earlier on this year in the payment of the SRD grants, because there has been an integration of the system on the back end where SARS is also part of it, the UIF, and all of them are linking to the SASSA system. So if you're getting if you're being registered on the one end, then it raises sort of red flags with SASSA. But of course, the system itself, at the time, it was still being fine-tuned, and there were beneficiaries who were then blocked from receiving some of that money, but still qualified because they had not had jobs. I guess it's a greater integration and centralization of this data that Calvin is talking to. Thomas, you're in Newcastle. Good morning.
Morning, Cathy. I liked your opening remark, and I was following in on that. And I'm hearing most of the guys that are calling in and leaving voice notice talking about the same thing. The whole thing of how do we get to a point where we build on this democracy that we had gotten that sought to liberate us, you know. And I was just thinking, maybe initially it was a needed thing for us to have a dependence on politicians, councillors telling us what to do until they miss the mark and think then they are our bosses. Now, I think the solution is simple. I heard you asking the last caller, what's the solution? Let's just build a parallel structure. You know, when it comes to getting water, we know in my situation here, we are in KZN, Amachuba district. Tugela provides us with water. We just get together as communities, raise money, get together, get in account with them. Who says we can't do that? We can do that. I mean, in the olden days, the farmers, in apartheid days, farmers will be in the Bundu, places where you can't even drive with your normal vehicle. They would be asking Eskom to bring electricity. It was not Eskom then, I don't know what it was. But they would buy electricity for themselves and pay. So let's get to that place. If the municipality is saying we can't do it, we ask them why. We get licenses, we get permissions, we start doing these things ourselves. We ignore them.
Yeah. You know, Thomas, the support that we need from the government officials, especially including at a local level, that of course should not be underestimated, right? Because let's say if you're wanting to put up a infrastructure, whatever the case might be, those approvals are approvals that are going to have to come from the municipality. And
but here is the thing.
Yeah,
I agree with that. But here is the thing. As a citizen, There are policies to say, if you want this, this is what you do. Let's look at, for instance, the guys at the Afrikaans guys or Oranje. Oranje has got this thing. Why? They knew which doors to go to, which doors to knock at, and do it properly. There's nothing illegal. We have people here who are educated, who have been and they've retired. They know how these things are done. We get ourselves together, we raise the money, we just ignore these structures because they don't care about us. They are in to enrich themselves. You know what I'm saying? The bottom line is, as a citizen, I'm guaranteed, even by the Constitution, to make a life for myself. I can pay the tax to the government and leave them alone. The tax must supply me with the road infrastructure. If they don't, I must withhold my tax and start doing things for myself, because the tax should be coming back. It's a cycle. It should be coming back to supply that I don't have a pothole. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, Thomas, I hear you loud and clear. Thomas out in Newcastle. And yeah, I mean, he's right when he talks about some of the developments that have taken place in Oranje. And that is out of the efforts of that community. Yes, one might have maybe different views in terms of how they've gone about in organizing that community in the context of South Africa. But the point is, they're not waiting for development to take place. I think they're almost done building that university that they wanted to build. The last I checked, I think that university is almost up. So it is possible. Yeah. Okay, all right. Thomas out in Newcastle. Let's leave it there. Vuyiswa in Parktown North. Good morning, Vuyiswa. I hope that you're indoors today.
You know what was happening yesterday? I think I should have closed the windows.
Oh, okay.
There was so much wind outside. But anyway, I think it was for the good of today. Thanks, Cathy. On the opening of remarks, with the lady there. I would like to actually, in this sense, something that stood out for me when Minister Ronald Lamola was addressing the conference in the U.S. It's something that, what stood out for me was what that Mwalimu Julius Nyerere said that the lady was referencing. It is about us developing ourselves, because that's a birthright. That's what you're born with. Politics came after you've been given this birthright. He said three things. One, we're agreeing with Lebo when I was talking to Lebo yesterday. It was like when he said the U.S., it's not like it's the U.S. that we are benefiting from the U.S. on this AGOA or whatever you call it, but they are also benefiting from us. You know what ran into my mind when you were saying those words is that in the rural areas, if you can go and talk about this AGOA and what have you, no one knows, because it only runs in the upper echelons. Those people that know, they are the ones who moan if the U.S. is going to pull out and what have you. What about our own intellect that we're born with, that we must develop ourselves? And this is a birthright, as I said. And there was another thing that stood out for me was when he actually challenged them and told them our relationship is mutual, for the fact that we cannot tell the U.S. what to do in their own territories. And as much as they are not supposed to, which means there must be respect in this mutual relationship, not the other bullying the other. And the reason why people are not developing, they wait for the U.S. How can you wait for someone to cross the Atlantic Ocean, the Pacific Ocean, the Indian Ocean to come and tell you how to survive? That alone is a disease that we must deal with, according to me. The only thing these people beat us, Cathy, is that they have resources. We don't have. So you stand here waiting for somebody to come and tell you what to do, run around. I feel so bad when I see our brothers and sisters from the continent, even from South Africa, running around a small Indian boy for such little salary. They run around. So do you mean to say that these people can't think? There's so much land in Malawi. I've been there visiting a friend. There's so much land in Zimbabwe, but people run away. When you ask the reason, brothers, even including South Africans, I have no money. So the banks are the main enemy to the people of Africa, because if these banks were fair and be able, when you come with have your idea, instead of them stealing your idea, they must help somewhere somehow, because we are dispossessed.
Okay.
We are displaced in our own territories. Yeah.
All right. Vuiswa out in Parktown North. That's Vuiswa's view there. I'm going to take a quick break. I'm back with more of your calls.
Kickstart your journey to success in 2025 with the Durban University of Technology. DUT offers programs in the faculties of Accounting and Informatics, Applied Sciences, Arts and Design, Engineering and the Built Environment, Health Sciences and Management Sciences, open for applications for 2025. Applications close on 30th September 2024, but dates may vary. Visit dut.ac.za for a full list of available programs and entry requirements. Apply now through the Central Applications Office by visiting cao.ac.za.
Weeknights on S3 are anything but ordinary. BBC Primetime brings you the best of British television from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Open your mind to Life on Death Row, Thursdays at 9 p.m. and Resistance in a Hostile Environment, a 3-part documentary showcasing turning points which would go on to define race relations in the UK for a generation. Thursdays at 10 p.m. Wind down your weeknights with The Outlaws, Fridays at 9 p.m. and explore the world's most dangerous roads at 10 p.m. Channel your best entertainment with BBC Primetime, only on S3. Open up. S3.
Congratulations to Mzansi's latest Powerball winner, who won the life-changing jackpot of over 107 million rand on Friday. Play Powerball and Powerball Plus for 41 million rand in a total estimated jackpot this Tuesday for your chance at winning millions. Buy your tickets now in store on the National Lottery.co.za, the mobile app, cell phone banking, or simply dial *120*7529# for USSD. Panda Pusha Play. Players must be 18 years or older. Play responsibly. Ituba is the proud operator of the National Lottery.
Hashtag SAFM Talking Point.
107 million rand. Somebody actually won the Powerball. Do they... Zalma, no, they didn't blow it already. You watch too much TV. Not everybody blows their money like the people on I Blew It. Yeah, congratulations to that person. I'd love to interview that person. Maybe we must try and find them, even if they come on anonymously. Hey, their lives have changed so much. Anonymous, you're calling us from Hammanskraal. Good morning.
Good morning, Cathy. How are you?
I'm well, thank you.
I'm not too good.
Okay, what's wrong, Anonymous?
Cathy, I was on your show, I think in April.
Okay.
My daughter was supposed to be graduating then. So from Vaal University of Technology, apparently.
Oh yes, I remember the story. There was an issue with her being on the list, and then she wasn't allowed to go inside and graduate. Yes.
Yes. And 3 weeks or 2 weeks back, she got the confirmation that she would be graduating today. Today is the 17th. So yesterday, like since Friday, like the whole of last week, I was asking her, did they send you the date? Did they send you the date? She said, yes, ma'am, they sent the date, but the time they did not send. What time? So yesterday in the morning, I just got that feeling. I pushed her. I said, no, ma'am, these people should have sent the time by now, because this is the last day, Monday. Tomorrow is Tuesday. We should sleep knowing what time should we be there. Oh, surprise, surprise, Cathy. I pushed her. I said, no, man, if you have somebody in campus, just call them and ask what is going on that side. Cathy, to my surprise, she called the other friend of hers that that lady sent us that the graduation, the campus is busy, as in now some people are at the hall, 10 o'clock they are graduating. She sent my daughter the details that my daughter is graduating at 2 p.m. Pardon me, 2. Yesterday, we only got the message that the graduation is on the 16th, which was yesterday. The message we got what time? 10 o'clock in the morning, Cathy. We have to jump and leave everything. Quickly, we rushed there. We got there 2:30, Cathy. I was driving like I'm crazy. When we got there, my daughter was not allowed to get in because already the graduates were inside the hall. So, while University of Technology denied my daughter the chance to walk the podium, they denied me the chance to say my daughter's clan names. You can imagine, Cathy, how happy I was waiting for this. For 3 years, I was waiting for my daughter to walk that podium. And according to me, the Vaal University of Technology failed me because it means my daughter graduated on absentia while she was present. There were people as far as Mpumalanga who got there late. They were denied access to get inside that wall.
Yeah, I don't even know what to make of it, because I remember at the time we did get in touch with Vaal University, and of course they tried to explain where the mix-up had been with your daughter's graduation the first time around. Yeah, listening to it, it's hard to start thinking that this thing now is not personal. One can't help but wonder, well, what is this about? Surely it should not be. It should not be this complicated. Look, I must say that the university was very receptive at the time, and the officials were helpful. So I think we'll just have to again push, because there clearly is an issue of communication. It might not be widespread, but where it is an issue, it of course affects people like you and your daughter, So it does sound like they need to tighten things up a bit on the administrative end. We'll have to get in touch with them anyway to give them a right of reply to what you're saying, Anonymous. But I'm so sorry about the entire experience. It's really ruined what is supposed to be a special moment in both your lives.
Exactly. Yeah. And to think of it, it was not my daughter alone who didn't get the date. So imagine if we didn't find out yesterday, we were going to go today, go for nothing, because it was yesterday.
Yeah, that is. Yeah, it sounds like a huge administrative bungle. But Anonymous, we'll have to get in touch with the university to also hear their side of things and give them a right to respond. Yeah, but either way, I'm so sorry about your experience, Anonymous.
No, it's okay. Cathy and your team, thank you very much.
All right.
Okay, bye-bye.
Okay, take care. Yeah, sure. And graduations are just one of those moments. I was in Bushbuck Ridge recently attending a graduation there of students at an agricultural college. And I must tell you, you must see how excited parents get. My word, it's just so beautiful. And, when you have it at some of the other institutions of higher learning, there's like all of this, people are well-behaved, decorum. But at the college, there was just a celebration that was so authentic. It was so, you just see how much it means for families. And I guess being deprived of that moment is really, really something that can have an impact on the graduates themselves and their families. All right. we're going to leave it there with the open line. Of course, open line continues tomorrow. So call early. Be first in line. It's 10 o'clock.
In our top stories, Minister sets deadline to eradicate pit toilets in public schools, and BMW urged to not dismiss workers implicated in fraud investigations. Good morning. The Basic Education Minister, Siviwe Kgwakgobe, says their target is to completely eradicate pit latrines in schools by March 2025. The minister was accompanied by the Deputy Minister and Limpopo MEC for Education, visited the schools in the province to assess the state of education. Kgwakgobe says over 90% of schools in the province that were using pit latrines were provided with EnviroLoos, which are waterless, dry sanitation toilet systems, as well as flushing toilets. Kgwakgobe says the department is dedicated to improving infrastructure in schools.
Nationally, we're sitting with 266 here. In Limpopo, we are sitting with 31. I engaged the MEC on this, and they are at various stages of implementation in the various schools. So I am confident that if we work together and if we blacklist the implementing agents that do not do government work, we can meet our target.
A group of parents and civil organizations are expected to picket outside the Linwood Ridge Primary School in Pretoria East this morning over alleged racism and bullying. The school is being accused of ignoring bullying and racism complaints. Last week, parents and learners held a demonstration at the neighbouring Hoërskool de Wilgers, calling for a probe into racism allegations at the school after a pupil was expelled for allegedly calling a fellow black pupil the K word. One of the organisers of the picket is Felicia April.
While we were at the Wilgers last week, 3 parents came forward and complained that their kids have been bullied. The one kid was actually bullied for 4 years. When the bullying stopped, it's now a teacher bullying the child. The one teacher even poked the child in the face. It seems like Linwood Primary has a bullying system that they're trying to cover up. Because according to the parents, there's more parents. They've been trying for the school to deal with it. They've been trying for the department to deal with it, and no one does anything.
The National Union of Metal Workers, NUMSA, has urged management at BMW not to dismiss workers implicated in an ongoing fraud investigation. About 700 employees at BMW's Roslyn plant in Pretoria went on strike last week after being placed under investigation for medical aid fraud involving the company's employee medical aid scheme and are now facing dismissal. So far, 6 employees have been arrested, 20 have been dismissed, and over 600 face disciplinary action. NUMSA's Regional Secretary Jerry Murulane.
You can't have a bloodbath of job losses under the current economic situation that we have in our country. We've been engaging with them for the past 2 weeks or so, and their view is that they can't negotiate discipline. But our view is that discipline ultimately must be a corrective measure to correct whatever situation that workers will be found to have misconducted on. So we made quite few suggestions short of a dismissal, that no worker should be dismissed. All workers should still be allowed to continue while discipline is instilled upon them.
The executive mayor of the Nelson Mandela Bay Metro, Gary van Niekerk, says they've had several meetings with the ANC about a possible reshuffle in the metro. This comes after the ANC announced plans to establish an ANC-led governance in the metro. Van Niekerk says the planned reshuffle comes after the provincial ANC received a directive from National for the party to lead all municipalities where they are a majority. Van Niekerk says further discussions about the way forward are expected.
What's happened in the last week or two is that we had very cordial meetings where this possible change was discussed. The ANC provincially received a national instruction that where they have the most seats, they should be leading government. And What's going to happen now is that I haven't had any feedback after this weekend's meeting, but I know for a fact that we'll be having a meeting with him in the near future, and we'll, together with all the parties, will discuss it.
And finally, U.S. President Joe Biden has spoken to Donald Trump a day after what's being investigated as a second assassination attempt against him. The White House said Biden conveyed his relief that Trump was safe. Trump took to social media platform X after speaking to Biden and said the president could not have been nicer and had asked for suggestions, to which Trump responded saying that he needed more people on his security detail. Recapping the top story, the Basic Education Minister, Siviwe Kgwakgobe, says their target is to completely eradicate pit latrines in schools by March 2025. For SAFM News, I am Anne Musa.
SAFM 104 to 107 nationwide.
TUT Matatlanta ladies are focused on full points as they chase a suitable position in the top half. But UWC want to triumph and pressurize log leaders. This is the Hollywood Bet Super League. Catch Mzansi Queens of the beautiful game. TUT Matatlanta Ladies FC versus UWC Ladies FC on Saturday 21 September at 8:30 a.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available at your fingertips on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
Mzansi, what has become of our country? Gender-based violence is eating our moral fabric, and we can no longer afford to turn a blind eye. This violence affects us all, occurring in various forms including femicide, which is the intentional killing of a woman because of her gender. It takes place anywhere, anytime, even in our own safe spaces at home. Working together with social partners through the National Strategic Plan on GBVF, the government aims to create a GBVF-free South Africa. As we acknowledge the gains from our 30 years of freedom and democracy, let us also work together to break the cycle of GBVF on our home ground. Call the 24-hour GBVF Command Center number on 0800 428 428 or text *120*7867#. A message from the GCIS.
Weeknights on S3 are anything but ordinary. BBC Primetime brings you the best of British television from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. You love drama? Then step into the world of Luther as he cracks down on criminals terrorizing the streets of London Monday to Wednesdays at 9 p.m. Top Gear will have you falling in love and rolling in laughter as Jeremy Clarkson and his team take you on an automotive journey like no other, Monday to Wednesdays at 10 p.m. Channel your best entertainment with BBC Primetime, only on S3. Open up. S3.
SAFM has signed a code of conduct that is enforced by the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. Under the code, we are committed to giving news that is accurate, comment that is fair, and programming that is not harmful, does not amount to hate speech, or contain violence or explicit sex. If you think we are not living up to that code, then you can inform the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. Direct any complaints in writing to the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. PO Box 142365. Craig Hall 2024. Fax to 011-326-3198 or an email to bccsa@nabsa.co.za. For more information, please visit www.bccsa.co.za.
Bengu, 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 Bengu.
This Heritage Month, SAFM invites you to celebrate the rich tapestry of our nation's diverse cultures. From the vibrant beats of our traditional music to the flavors of our unique cuisines, every culture tells a story of strength, unity, and identity. We honor the heroes and heroines who laid down their lives for our freedom, reminding us that our shared heritage is what makes us strong. Together as one, we celebrate who we are because our culture is our identity. This Heritage Month, let's celebrate every culture, every story, and every voice.
Bengu, Bengu, Bengu.
The Talking Point with Cathy Mohlahlana. Weekdays, 9 a.m. till midday.
You're listening to The Talking Point. Welcome to the second hour of the show. A pleasure to have you with us. If you've just tuned in, I'm Cathy Mohlahlana, and of course we're together until midday leading the conversation. In the Tuesday, in the second hour of Tuesday, we often deal with our finance slot, and Brian Hirsch is in studio. He's going to be taking us through the hour. We're talking about wills already. Just from my small team here in the office, we know that 50% of us have wills, and the other 50%, I don't know what is happening with our lives in that front. And yes, if you're listening to this question and you're answering no, you don't have a will, please stay tuned for the rest of the hour, because Brian is going to give us the kind of information that is going to make it clear to us why we should not leave it hanging, why we should not postpone it, and of course some of the administrative issues involved there. Lots of your WhatsApp voice notes coming through from the open line. Thank you for all of the engagement as always. What we will look into is the issue of these water tankers, because we're getting voice notes from different parts of the country that are saying the same thing around municipalities providing water tankers. But those water tankers that have been deployed, then not actually refilling the tanks in the communities, because they expect more money before they can actually go ahead and do that. It should not be happening. So please, if you have examples of that happening in your area, get in touch with us. We are going to be following up on that issue. All right, here your WhatsApp voice notes.
Good morning, Cathy. Cathy, it's Leon Khwedi here. Cathy, my take is that I want to know how our children could be assisted in order to get the funding from NSFAS. Because I listened to Munisi in the morning at what's named Tula Caesar's show. He didn't touch a criteria which is being used currently. Whereby they look at the status of the parents, and then they say if you are earning more than 3,500 rand, you don't qualify to can get the funding. Our children are getting frustrated because of this kind of issue, because some of us we are getting paid plus minus let's say 15,000. But it doesn't make up the threshold whereby you could be then denied to be funded, because the institutions are very expensive. It's Lennon.
Good morning, Cathy. Cathy, I think the main reason why
September 2024, heading in list.
All this wanting of the people from the government is happening, it's because of greed. I think greed is playing a major role in people's lives today. If you look around you, all over the world, it's not only here, it seems to be like a season. I wonder how we're going to get rid of it. Thank you, Cathy. Bye.
You know, we've been, we are now targets of those private people who are selling water, because you must take your last money to buy water, because you cannot, water is life. You can't stay without water. If you see them running in our area, I mean, you stop them just to buy maybe 20 liter or 10 liter, because you don't have a choice. You put buckets the whole day on your wall, and you see the trucks passing by. You do everything just to request water, but you don't get the necessary attention. Temba Hamaskral, we don't have leaders, honestly speaking. You must beg for water each and every time. Please invite them, Sis Cathy, as well. Please, Anonymous.
Cathy, good morning. Look, Cathy, what you're saying about Orania, I mean, even we also blacks, we wouldn't wait for the government to come and assist us. We do it ourselves if we were as privileged as those people there who live at Orania. I mean, we here at education, if I had a cow, I had money, I wouldn't even wait for government to come and collect my rubbish. I'd even go take my rubbish self where rubbish must be thrown. But look, at all locations, it's rubbish everywhere because there's no service delivery. The government doesn't collect the rubbish. So when we complain, you must look at it from that point also. I thank you, Martina Bloemfontein.
Good morning, Sis Cathy. I differ with what Vriso's thinking or assertion. I think she has benefited somehow from the corrupt black government. Let me go to this issue. The government had a very good idea. I'm staying in West Rand and they delivered tractors and implements for agriculture. But guess what? The people who receive those on behalf of the communities, now they're using them as personal utensils. They're using them as their personal things. You need to pay them when you want to access the services.
Talking Finance with Brian Hirsch, making sense of your finance.
If you have a life insurance but you are smoking weed only, do they consider you as a smoker or a non-smoker?
He wants to know that if you smoke weed, marijuana.
But I can tell you, if you tell the insurance company, I don't smoke, but I smoke weed and marijuana, I think they may either load you or decline you.
I know why, man? Yeah, hey, 'cause I'm high, 'cause I'm high, 'cause I'm high. Are you really high, though, man? He really is high, man. Shoop, shoop, shooby.
All right, we always say that there's no such thing as a stupid question on this slot, especially because we're talking finance. And if your numbers are anything like mine, you absolutely want the very basics of basic when it comes to understanding this world. Brian Hirsch, always a pleasure. Good morning, good morning.
Good morning to you and nice to be with you. And Cathy, I've got very bad news for you.
Okay, first
you made the point. No,
first we must set the context. Okay,
you
go
made
for
the
it.
point. I've made the point that you can't ask a stupid question. You can only get a stupid answer.
Yes.
The jingle now has changed. Can you get insurance if you smoke weed? The answer is yes. No longer no.
Oh, what has changed?
Yes, I've had confirmation from two companies. That's all I went to, Liberty and Momentum.
Yes.
And I've had confirmation from them that if you smoke weed, yes, you will have to complete what's called a substance questionnaire, which just says how addicted are you to it. Do you smoke it for medicinal purposes or is it used for recreational purposes? You will be considered a smoker. And you can get insurance get it the same rate as anyone else who's a smoker. So me answering the question previously, no, you'd probably get declined, is wrong. You see, you learn every day. I hope our listeners learn every day on this program. I hope we're able to help them. And if you don't disclose that you smoke weed, but you do, and you then subsequently die, insurance companies will not automatically decline the policy. They may then treat your rating because you disclosed that you were a non-smoker and you were a smoker, so they will reduce the cover according to the percentage premium that the discount you've had. So, to my producers, we'll have to change the jingle.
No, you see what Brian is trying to do? He's been trying to get rid of this jingle for the longest time. It's not going to work. All we're going to do is update the answer. That's all. Nice try, Brian.
Okay.
But thank you for doing that research. I think that's going to help a lot of people who wanted to know the answer to that question. Do you think it's because of the growth of the cannabis industry?
Well, no, because firstly, cannabis has now been legalized, and now it's equivalent to another set of smoking. You know, when I first started in the insurance industry, I went to a client, and they had their "How much do you drink?" And this guy told me he drank 6 beers a day. And I was scared to submit the application to the insurers for underwriting because I thought 6 beers a day is a lot.
Yeah.
It doesn't turn out that 6 beers a day is that much, you know, and he was accepted without any loadings.
What is considered a lot?
If you drink a bottle of scotch a day and maybe 12, every company has different ways of underwriting.
Yes,
But
yes.
again, let me make this point. If you have taken out a policy and you've told them you're a non-smoker and you are a smoker, and let me tell you today, the techniques when autopsies are done, they can pick it up. What happens is your policy won't be declined, but what will happen is they will reduce the sum insured that you thought you had on your life to based on the premium versus what you would have paid being a smoker, and cannabis is now treated as a smoker. But you will have to, and the wording is, you will have to complete what they call is a substance use questionnaire.
Okay.
Okay, so change the jingle. Shame, Cathy, you won't be able to bop for those first 30 seconds. Cathy, you should see Cathy.
The sad thing is that you're the one that's in for a bad surprise, because that jingle is not going anywhere. Brian, today we're talking about wills. Also because it is National Wills Week.
Yeah. Cathy, you started off and you said that 50% of all of us in the studios, well, I would now make it slightly more because I do have a will. Over 50% of us have a will. By the way, that statistics is not only higher than not only South Africa, but the rest of the world. Globally, 75 to 80% of people don't have wills. They don't think wills are necessary. I'm saying to you, you can have a simple will, you can have a more complicated will, you can have to redo your will. But let me say this is National Wills Week, and if you go onto the website, Law Society Re-Wills, you will pick up in your area where you can have a will done, no charge whatsoever. You can speak to those attorneys, they are doing it. It's for the week. I should have maybe mentioned it last week, so you're already prepared, but it's only Tuesday morning now. You've still got a few more days. And very simply, it is a question, do you have a will? Is your will simple? So when I say simple, a simple will, husband to wife, if something happens to the husband and wife, to the children, or ultimately to grandchildren, that's a simple will. A more complicated will is if you've got a complicated set of affairs, circumstances. You've got business shares, you've got assets overseas, you've got other types of assets. You've got antiques, you've got paintings, you've got Persian carpets, you've got stamps, you've got Bitcoin, all these things. Why?
Because you dropped your pen in case you need another one.
No, I dropped my glasses. Here's my pen. But thank you, Cathy. Right. So all I'm saying is that's a simple will. So, and I think it's important to understand what this is all about, because it is an excellent opportunity to create and update your will with free drafting services from legal professionals. Even if you've got no one and you're a single person, you may have some assets, you may have some insurance policy, you may have membership of a pension fund, you may own a car. You've got to decide who that's going to go to. So that's a simple will. That could be a 1 or 2 page will. Get that will done because it makes it so much easier ultimately for someone who's got to wind up your estate. That person is called the executor, and that person will then have to distribute the assets. You may owe money, even if it's money to the medical aid or to doctors, and how is that going to be settled? You may want some money to go to one child, another child, to grandchildren. Who knows? If you don't have a will, then you make it very complicated for anyone to distribute your assets, and they may be distributed to areas where you don't want them to go to. I mean, I think of someone who's been married, and a simple will, I left everything to my wife, they get divorced, and now you didn't change your will, and you die. If you have it, you've got 90 days to change your will in the event of divorce, and you haven't changed your will. How would you feel 5 years later if the woman you divorced receives the assets? So even a simple will needs to be looked at.
You know, I recently came across this story, Brian, and it was one that it was covered last month. And it was over a legal tussle over the multi-million rand estate of a woman who died and in her will gave instructions that a trust must be established to take care of her pets, and her pets being these two African grey parrots. One was Charlie and one was Frankie. And there's now a dispute over who must administer this estate between the neighbor who she was close with and somebody else who's disputing it. And I'm going back to what you're saying around, even if you are single, it is still important for you to have a will, because you do have a lot of single people that may not have children, but they have pets. And they have to think about, well, what happens to those pets when I die? Of course, this is a much more extreme example, because here are these multi-millions of rands. There's only so much luxury these pets are going to be able to live in. But that, of course, arises either way.
Cathy, that's not an unusual clause. Elderly people, their only companion happens to be their pets. And so if you have a will and you leave assets to someone who's going to look after the pets, you need to make sure you've named that person, how much will be needed, and if you don't put an amount, yes, your executor may need to do some calculations, get advice on how much is needed. You say that's unusual. It's not unusual. I mean, pets.
Really, Brian?
Well, Cathy, I love my dogs. I know if something happens to me, my wife will look after them. I only said to my son this weekend, my son came to Johannesburg and he asked me, he's dealing with an estate of a friend of his, a first estate that he's ever dealt with, and he got a fright what a mess it is. So he wanted to know from me, where are my assets, what's going to happen? And I asked him, I've got 2 dogs, what are you going to do with my 2 dogs? So it's not unusual, but that's a good example. I don't know how that dispute will be resolved, but let me tell you, you spoke about a woman with multi-millionaires, but what about if you don't have a lot of money? What are you going to do with your pets? Who's going to be the guardian to your children? If you're a single mother, who's going to be the guardian? Have you discussed with your sister or your brother, will they be prepared to be the guardian? If you have children, then children under the age can't inherit. And if children can't inherit under 18, where are these assets going to? The last thing you want to do is the assets go to the Guardian Fund, because the Guardian Fund is then controlled. It's a government body, and I don't need to tell you sometimes there are delays and messes that go on. So who are going to be the trustees? You need to engage with the trustees, and trustees need to know their responsibility before they agree. So many people just say, yes, I'll be a trustee, but they don't understand that today trustees are responsible for ensuring that the trust pays tax and submitted tax returns. And if it doesn't, trustees can be held liable. So it's not just say, yes, I'll do it to you as a favour. You need to understand what your responsibilities are. And so people can't, and people have got possessions. What do you do with the possessions? However they may be, a small car, furniture. You've got to determine where that's going to go to. You can do a simple will. This is an opportunity to contact a legal firm in your area, Law Society, Re-Wills. That's what you Google, and that'll give you a list of names who you can contact.
When it comes to wills, people are also often concerned about the percentage, the commission that they will be charged for. So yes, you have these legal firms that are offering to write up free wills this week, but of course they're thinking about when and how they're going to make their money, which is ultimately at the end.
Yes, but you don't have to you don't have to appoint that firm. If you do appoint that firm and you've got a larger estate, the statutory fee for winding up an estate is 3.5% plus VAT, so that's just over 4% of the value of the estate. Remember, pension fund numbers don't come into that, but life policies do become part of that estate. But you can negotiate with that legal firm to say, I want a clause written in that you'll only charge me 1.25%, 1.5%, or you don't have to appoint them. It's not obligatory obligatory that because they've drawn up your will, you have to appoint them. You can appoint a family member who can then negotiate with that firm after death. So if I've got a will and I've got a firm that's going to be the executor, and nothing's discussed about the fee, 3.5% plus VAT. If I now appoint my son and my son goes to that same firm and says, my father died, now what will you charge? You may be able to negotiate the fee down to 1.5%. So you can negotiate that. But the important thing is, if you've got children, when the children are going to inherit, who's going to be the guardian of the children? If you're a single parent, and because normally it'd be the father, but maybe the father's remarried with other children and there's no relationship. So these are things. But remember, even if a father has no relationship, he's still the next of kin, and you need to ensure that the right person looks after the children. So it's not a complicated document unless you've got a whole lot of assets all over the world, properties.
We're going to go to the latest news headlines. I'm back with Brian and, of course, your questions for him.
A very good morning to you with the news headlines. The SA Union of Students, SAUS, has warned against students who submit fraudulent documents when applying for funding from NSFAS. Basic Education Minister Siviwe Kwagube says their target is to completely eradicate pit toilets in schools by March next year. And police are investigating a case of murder and attempted murder after an off-duty police officer shot and killed his girlfriend at a restaurant on Florida Road in Durban. A full news update at the top of the hour.
Taking a look at your markets this morning, the rand currently trading at 17 rand 61 to the dollar, 23 rand 27 to the pound, and 19 rand 61 to the euro. Markets in Asia were mixed at the closing bell. The JSE has extended gains in mid-morning trade. Markets in Europe are higher this hour. Gold is trading at $2,581, platinum $980 per ounce. The price of Brent crude oil is at $72.65 a barrel.
Talking Finance with Brian Hirsch, making sense of your finance.
Spurs set their sights on 3 points and trust their strategy to contain their visitors.
And there's the flick, and there's the goal. Pedro Porro.
While the Bees have a huge responsibility to illustrate that if they play impressive football for the entire duration, they will march out of the pitch a happy outfit.
Narrow angle, hits the post, back to Mbeumo, 1-0.
This is the Premier League. Catch the thrilling contest between Tottenham Hotspur FC and Brentford FC on Saturday 21 September at 3:30 p.m. live on SABC3. Also available at your fingertips on SABC Plus and SABCsport.com. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Think bigger than just a banking partner. Think a team of specialized experts supporting you to make better financial decisions to enable your growth aspirations. Think a strategic partnership providing indispensable advice to help you make the right moves. Think bigger. Think Nedbank Commercial Banking. For more information, visit nedbank.co.za. See money differently. Nedbank. We're a licensed FSP and registered credit provider.
This September, S3 brings you thought-provoking nature dockies that will change the way in which you view the world. Temperature Rising tells the story of 3 activists as they grapple with what thinking globally and acting locally means as they fight the barriers to climate action. Airs Sunday the 8th of September. Channel your inner activist with our selection of premium dockies Sundays at 5 p.m. only on S3. Open up.
Congratulations to Mzansi's latest Powerball winner, who won the life-changing jackpot of over 107 million rand on Friday. Play Powerball and Powerball Plus for 41 million rand in total estimated jackpots this Tuesday for your chance at winning millions. Buy your tickets now in store on nationallottery.co.za, the mobile app, cell phone banking, or simply dial *120 *7529# for USSD. Panda Pusha Play. Players must be 18 years or older. Play responsibly. Ituba is the proud operator of the National Lottery.
Talking Finance with Brian Hirsch, making sense of your finance.
All right, so we're talking finance with Brian Hirsch, and as always, Brian is in studio. Soon we'll be taking your questions for him. We're talking about wills, 086 000 2032. That's the number to dial, 086 000 2032. On the WhatsApp voice note line, 0614 104 107. So, Brian, I want to come to the issue of clauses that are in wills. And as we went to news, you were speaking about having young children in a situation where parents are divorced, and the fact that if you're not specific in your will about what must happen to your funds, then automatically your former partner could be the one who is in charge of managing those funds on behalf of the children.
Well, remember, they're your assets
Yes.
once you're divorced, because no more the marriage regime, accrual or not accrual, whatever the case may be, in community of property. So those assets, you would then determine who's going to manage those assets and how those assets are going to be managed, because in the will you would say, I'm appointing such and such a person to manage the assets on behalf of my children. It would be because children, anyone, you don't want children to inherit anyway under 25. I mean, that's the limit I put in. You want children to finish studying, but you set up a trust, and those trusts, you then create trustees, and one of those trustees will be an advisor to those investments, and then the trustees will make decisions of how much is allocated in terms of the children's need, where the children are going to live, rent, and so on. But it's the one clause that's very important in a divorce agreement, in a divorce case, is who is going to be the guardian. I mean, so often one of the parents disappears, and therefore, but they could suddenly reappear and be the guardian. So you've got to make sure that because both parents are responsible for looking after children if you're divorced, but you've got to make sure that's an important law. And that's where the will may become a little bit more complicated, because you can't take the rights away from one of the parents if you die. The surviving spouse is entitled, unless it's by agreement that that person is not going to be the guardian. That's where the will becomes complicated.
Sure. So everybody has to pay attention, especially if you're caught up in some of those situations. Yes.
Yeah, I got a question last night because I dealt with wills on television. He says, how do I draw up a will if I'm unable to sign properly? Now, a lot of people aren't drawing up a will because maybe they don't know how to sign. You can use an X. However, you need to sign that X in front of a commissioner of oaths who can confirm that you're in good condition and that you're able to understand what you're doing, and to confirm that you in actual fact was that individual signing. But don't be scared if you can't write. You can still draw up a will. You can go to a police station. The attorneys have got commissioner of oaths. They are automatically commission of oaths, and they will be able to testify that yes, that was you, the person drawing up the will.
All right, let's start bringing in some of your questions for Brian. We'll kick it off with the voice notes.
Hello, Ketu. Can you please ask Brian for me, in the case of a will that like supposed to be written, right? So if a person records a video of the will, can that will be accepted in court?
Has to be. Oh, my apologies, Cathy. A will has to be signed, and it has to be witnessed by two individuals. The master, when you get wound up in a estate and you want to apply to be an executor, the master wants to see sight of the will, and the master's office then oversees what the executor is doing. That's protection for the individual. Maybe slow, but it's protection for the individual. So a video is no good. It has to be signed, and it has to be witnessed by two independent witnesses who have no vested interest. I repeat that, no vested interest interest in the will. You can't have your wife who's going to inherit being a signatory as a witness. You can't have the executor. You can't have trustees. You can't have children being, when I say adult children, you have to get two independent. It doesn't matter who the people are as witnesses. Remember, the witnesses are not witnessing your will. They are witnessing your signature. So they don't need to read the will to understand. They're only witnessing your signature that you are the person signing that will.
That is such an important point to make around the role of the witness, because sometimes people don't want to sign things until they've read through each and every detail
Well,
and
then
clause.
get another witness. Another witness.
Good morning, Brian and Cathy. It's Keshi here from the Western Cape. On the subject of smoking marijuana, many years ago I stopped smoking tobacco. And after 2 years of not smoking tobacco, my insurance premium came down and I had divulged that I was smoking cannabis. They wanted to know how many joint hours a week or something like that. And then the insurance policy came down even further at the time. I'm not sure who it was, can't remember, Altrisk or Old Mutual or something. Anyway, I no longer smoke anything, just for the record, but it was actually quite interesting that even divulging then and for recreational purposes, there was a lower premium than for a person that actually smoked nicotine cigarettes.
Oh, you're bursting Cathy's bubble. They now really got a problem with my jingle. Thank you for that. Very simply. So, yes, that's correct. I've said this. When people are, I made the point last week that someone was smoking 8 cigarettes a month and was costing 250 Rand or something per cigarette because they smoke. Very simply, if you want to save money and you're a smoker, health-wise, give up smoking, and financial-wise, you will reduce your premiums by 40%, which means you can increase your cover by nearly 2/3 because you're no longer smoking. Interesting point that you made. They're now indicating, and this is very much in terms of what the discovery story, the vitality program. The healthier you are, the more benefits you get. So I always say you've raised an interesting question. I shall go back to the 2 companies who confirmed about marijuana that you're smoking, but I'll just ask them: is there any reason why your comments made to me this morning? Why that would happen, and maybe they feel discovery give points, and if you use those points and you travel and you go on holiday, they believe that that's all healthy, and so they give you benefits. So thank you for that comment.
Okay. All right, thank you for that. Another question from the WhatsApp line. I'll bring in our callers in a moment.
Hey, morning, Cathy. It's Savage here from Atteridgeville. Can you ask Brian to do something about trust funds? Is this issue of trust funds, man? I'm trying to ask companies. I also want to have a trust fund baby there or something. Just put my baby on some trust fund. But it makes... Is it a rich people's thing or what? I don't understand. I've been trying to call a lot of companies, but their reply it's dodgy, man. They're not giving me a straight answer. How does one start a trust fund? Like, do you put in money there like an account and, hide it away from your wife or something like that type thing? I don't know. Can we ask Brian to give us a tip on that?
Okay, people create trusts. It's called an inter vivus trust. It's a trust while you're alive, and trusts protect assets against, if you're in business and you're building a business and you've got debts in the business, creating money in a trust so that in the event of something happening to your business, assets are separated. So that's one of the reasons. Another reason people would create a trust is if you've got money going to young children, and what happens, children, you die when children are 12 and 15. You don't want them to inherit, because they can't inherit before they're 18, and if they did inherit, would you want them to inherit large amounts at 18? So that's where you create, in the event of death through the will, what's called a testamentary trust, where assets are left to the trust and managed by people you appoint as trustees. So always understand who you're appointing, and they will then look after those funds till the children are of an age when you, in terms of the will, want those assets. So it's not I see so many people with trusts, they've got nothing in the trust. It seems like a lot of firms, some firms were selling trusts, and the formation of trusts. A trust can cost anything between 5 and 20,000 rand. It's an easy way for certain legal firms to maybe create money. Ethical firms will never do that. There's a reason for a trust. So it's not a gimmick. And if you try and hide assets from a spouse and you then get divorced and your spouse knows about the trust, because if you're married in community property or married with accrual, she will bring to the fore to her attorneys that there's a trust as well, and then there are a whole lot of investigations that go on. So it's not there to hide money against assets, it's to protect assets, particularly from creditors, where you separate certain of your assets, that if your business goes wrong and you've signed personally, that your assets are protected. However, if you don't have assets and you want funds, borrow funds, maybe your bankers will say, we want your trust to secure that, and that's where it becomes a more difficult situation.
And in terms of just the idea of, having trust fund babies, what would you say is a fundamental that underpins that? Because ultimately it's generational wealth that he's really speaking about.
Yes.
And how one has to go about in their thinking when creating generational wealth.
Well, it's an interesting thing. They say the first generation creates wealth, the second generation builds that wealth, and the third generation spends it all. So that's a saying. So the father, the grandfather, and the children. So when you're talking about wanting to protect assets on long term and not let those assets be squandered, that's where you could have a trust. So even when your children are older, they can only get funds from trustees where they satisfy the trustees the reason for those funds being distributed, and then those funds will go on. However, there's got to be some stage. I mean, when you're creating generational wealth, how far down the line do you go? To protect that generation wealth. I mean, do you really want to rule from the grave for 4 or 5 generations? So you've got to think very carefully when putting assets into a trust, and you form that trust deed, when you put the conditions in, how far down the line do you want to go? I can tell you, the majority of the trusts that I am involved with, it goes down to the third generation. Okay. In other words, father to children, children to grandchildren, and then one more generation before assets are distributed.
Okay.
Remember one thing as well, if you want to take assets out of the country, if you want to invest offshore, in terms of offshore, you can always do an asset swap in South Africa, where you can invest through a trust, you can invest assets that stay in South Africa, but if you want to take advantage overseas, you can't take money out of a trust. The trust would have to be a distribution, and then are you distributing in terms of your beneficiary, or is the trust loaning you money? These are all more complicated things, and these are not things that will be involved in getting service and getting advice under the National Wills Week.
Okay, we're going to take a quick break. I'm back with more of your calls after this.
When self-made billionaire Wilton Knight rescues police detective Lieutenant Michael Long after a near-fatal shot to the face, he gives him a new identity and a new name, Michael Knight. Paired with the unique Knight Industries 2000 aka kit, they are brought in during situations where direct action might provide the only feasible solution. Kusazo Shuba and Michael Knight and Kit are ready to rise to the occasion. Channel your best retro with Knight Rider, weekdays at 12 p.m. only on S3. Open up.
S3. Makoti Down Products is a proudly South African family business, started more than 30 years ago with 12 geese and a piece of material. Makoti manufactures duvets, pillows, sleeping bags, and high-quality Egyptian cotton linen. Our down products are suitable for people with dust mite allergies and come with a lifelong guarantee. And we offer a nationwide cleaning service for all your feather and down products. Visit us at makoti.co.za or call us on 041 992 2395. For quality down, Makoti Down.
Devastated by the brutal murder of his wife, John Luther returns in the second season of Luther to policing in a different world. With his old unit gone, Luther finds himself working in the newly created Serious and Serial unit, headed by former police complaints officer Martin Schenk. And now, a strange and mysterious masked man wanders the streets of London, carrying out ritualistic murders in historic locations, working his way up to one final masterpiece. Immerse yourself in a world-class drama with Luther Season 2, Mondays to Wednesdays at 9 p.m. Starts Tuesday the 10th of September on S3. Channel your inner drama with BBC Primetime, only on S3. Open up.
S3. Standard Bank Group, the biggest bank in Africa by assets, in partnership with SOAS, will host the 4th Annual Climate Summit on the 1st of October. The summit will host insightful discussions and various industry experts in charting Africa's course to net zero. The annual summit is one of Standard Bank's sustainability initiatives dedicated to driving growth on the African continent. Tune into SAFM and the SAFM Facebook page to be a part of the conversation in shaping the future of Africa's energy transition. Brought to you by Standard Bank Corporate and Investment Banking.
Talking Finance with Brian Hirsch, making sense of your finance.
All right, we'll continue the conversation with Brian. Let me go to Anonymous in Vosloorus. Anonymous, good morning.
How are you, Cathy?
Good, thank you, Anonymous. Go for it.
Okay, I'm going to be a little bit out of tune here, but I want to ask Mr. Hirsch about my problem with my SARS refund, because they've been sending me from pillar to post. They say it's in this company, I don't know, I can mention the name, but when I go to that one, they say another insurance company. So I need a help from Mr. Brian, maybe during his working hours, not on I don't know where to contact him.
In your particular case, I'm going to ask our producer just to take you back. They'll give me your number. I'll give you a call, because maybe it's a call that is specific to you. And I've had a lot of callers, and I say I try. I don't always get success, because I'm reliant on the information you gave me. I mean, I had a call this morning from a gentleman who he phoned us on television, radio last week, and he got 8 years ago. He was boarded. He got paid out R1 million. He worked for Barlow's, and I asked him for information. He has no information for me other than one lady who was working there 8 years ago. Well, I said to him, I need information. I need your staff number. I need a lot more to be able to go, because I'm going to go to the HR department. I'm going to go to the pension department and understand what the disability policy was at that time. So if you can't give me all the information, I'm really unable to help. And sometimes, even when you give me that information, I exhaust all avenues, but I'll do my best. So we'll take your number down.
All right, thanks for that. I've got a question here from Brenda, who says, I have been left a property in the UK, and I've been told by a friend that I must have a British will lodged in the UK. Is this correct?
Absolutely correct. Brenda, you need a will, and there are other jurisdictions that you also need a will. I know in Portugal, I know in Greece, I know in France, and there may be others. You need an international will. If you've got liquid assets or invested assets outside of property, certainly in the UK, your South African will suffice. But the minute you've got assets in any other part of the world, you need to check carefully. And it's not complicated to create a second will. What is complicated is to find who is going to be the executor of that will in a global, because I don't tell you, a pound is not a rand.
Of course.
I mean, a rand, £1 is 23.31 rand, and £100, in South Africa, a will may cost 1,000 or 1,500 rand. In the UK, a will will cost 1,000 or 1,500 pounds. So it's a lot more. So particularly if there's an insurance company involved, you could ask them, do they have someone who can help you, and so on.
Okay, I've got more questions for you, Brian.
FM, good morning, Cathy. Good morning, Brian. I got a question here. A friend of mine passed away last year. He was a teacher. He was not married. He never left a will. And who is entitled to his pension fund, because he's got some half brothers. You know, they got the same father but different mothers. So he's got nephews as well. You know, these nephews, they are the sons of her late sister. So now I would like to know who is entitled to his pension fund. Anonymous from Cape Town. Thank you very much.
Okay, well, under a pension fund, the first test is, were there any dependents? And if there were dependents, those dependents will rank first in line for monies from the pension fund. That would be the first. If there are no children and no dependents, then it works down the line, what they call per stirpes. First it goes down, if there's no spouse, it goes down to children or grandchildren. Then it goes up the line, it goes to grandparents, and then it goes along the line to brothers and sisters, and then ultimately to nephews. So it's quite a complicated matrix, but that's where the funds will go. But you would need to appoint an executor. Although under a pension fund, if that's the only asset, the trustees of that pension fund have 1 year to determine the test of dependence, and then they will determine where those funds. Everyone will have to come forward and put a claim in, and that will be left to the trustees of the pension fund. Where if it was a life policy, the beneficiary on the life policy would receive the benefits, but under a pension fund, even though he may have appointed someone to receive the funds, the trustees are still responsible for checking who are dependents, whoever those dependents may be. If there's someone outside there, a friend who have been dependent on him and he's helped, they would be entitled to put in a claim.
Brian, Roy Demas wants to know the 3.5% agent attorney executive fees to wind up an estate in excess of 250,000. What does it all cover? So what are people actually paying for?
They're paying for winding up that estate. Firstly, they're finding the executor has to establish where were the individual's investments and get details of that. The second thing the executor has to do is he has to ascertain, was there any money owed to any is there a debtor to, and then find out. The executor has to advertise the estate. The executor has to deal with the master's office, getting all the necessary form. There's an enormous amount of forms that need to be completed. There has to be an L&D account, which is a liquidation and distribution account, itemizing all the items. That has to be advertised, so to see if there are any other people who are owed money that haven't come forward. He has to ascertain if the will, who's the money going to go to. He has to then work out exactly what the split is. So the executor's job is very laborious, very time consuming, but as I said, you have the ability to negotiate lower fee. You can go to whoever is your executor, you can say to them, I've got a large estate, I want to now set a maximum fee. There's two ways you can charge, either for time or you can charge, as I said, the 3.5% plus VAT, but you have the right to negotiate.
Okay, Mr. Suleiman wants to know if a bank can be your executor or administrator, and if that's advisable.
Yeah, just understand there's a different word. They can be your executor, and banks have enormous amount, because they do wills for nothing, but they become the executor, and they will make their money one day when they want. And the administrator is the person ultimately who may be dealing with the trust. So don't confuse the word executor. Administrators normally when a trust is formed for children, and they are the trustees and administrators of the estate going forward. The executor's role ends once the final assets have been distributed, either to individuals, trusts, or accounts paid.
All right, Brian, we are unfortunately out of time for today. That's where we'll have to leave it. Your number?
011-880-4888. Again, leave all your numbers where you're phoning from. A couple of my colleagues are helping me keep up to date. Cathy, I've got bad news for you. I'm on holiday next Tuesday. on Heritage Day.
Oh, because it's school break. Where are you taking your grandkids?
No, I'm going away myself with my wife for the day. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
My grandchildren are up here this weekend.
Lovely.
So, are you working next Tuesday?
No, I'm taking the day off as well.
Okay, well, I wish you well. I wish all our listeners well on Heritage Day.
Yes.
And all the best.
So we'll
Cathy.
see each other then that other week, first week of October.
It's going to be so long. Will I survive?
I don't think you will. Brian Hirsch back again, as you heard, that first week of October.
This September, S3 brings you thought-provoking nature dockies that will change the way in which you view the world. Search for the Last Unicorn tells the story of the search for the northern white rhino, an animal that was officially declared extinct in 2018. Follow Saving the Survivors as they travel to South Sudan in the hope of giving us a second chance to save the northern white rhino. Airs Sunday the 22nd of September. Channel your inner activist with our selection of premium dockies Sundays at 5 p.m. only on S3. Open up. S3.
Ask me how I know that 50% of car claims are pre-approved instantly. That's because I was one of them.
Yeah, they got my car back on the road with the first repair.
I submitted my claim on the ANG app. I didn't even have to call.
Auto & General is proud to be recognised as South Africa's best car insurer by Forbes and The Star for short-term insurance. Isn't it time you switch to award-winning cover? Visit autogen.co.za. Auto & General, never not there. ANG is a licensed non-life insurer and FSP. T's and C's online.
Catch the Tastemaster Junior this Tuesday evening at 7 on SABC2. It's another elimination week, and the bottom 6 are taken on a culinary trip back to school. For this challenge, they must create their dream lunchbox filled with nutritious yet delicious treats. And their creations are impressive. That's the Tastemaster Junior this Tuesday evening at 7. Repeat Wednesdays at 1 and Sundays at 4 p.m. Only on SABC2.
At 11 o'clock, Student Union warns against NSFAS fraud and 2 VIP Protection Unit members convicted for theft. A very good morning to you. The SA Union of Students, SAUS, has warned against students submitting fraudulent documents when applying for funding from NSFAS. This follows the postponement of the 2025 NSFAS applications to Friday this week after concerns raised by student organizations at universities, TVET colleges, and institutional governance structures. The union's Lucanyo Daweti has urged students to submit all the required documents to avoid delays to access their tuition fees.
But we would like to make a very serious plea to all our students and learners to ensure that when they apply, they ensure that they are open as possible, because we've picked up that what have caused the backlog when we are following up with the cases at NSFAS is that some of our own brothers and sisters, the documentations that they have submitted is not corresponding.
Basic Education Minister Siviwe Gwahube says their target is to completely eradicate pit toilets in schools by March next year. She visited schools in Limpopo to assess the state of education there. Gwahube says over 90% of schools in the province that were using pit toilets were provided with EnviroLoos, which are waterless, dry sanitation toilet systems, as well as flushing toilets. She says the department is dedicated to improving infrastructure in schools.
Nationally, we're sitting with 266 here. In Limpopo, we are sitting with 31. I engaged the MEC on this, and they are at various stages of implementation in the various schools. So I am confident that if we work together and if we blacklist the implementing agents that do not do government work, we can meet our target.
Police are investigating a case of murder and attempted murder after an off-duty police officer shot and killed his girlfriend at a restaurant on Flodera Road in Durban. Police say it is believed that the off-duty officer went to his girlfriend's workplace and fired shots, killing her and leaving 2 people wounded. Spokesperson Robert Netsiunda.
It is reported that the man, an off-duty police officer, went to his girlfriend's workplace and the woman went out to meet him, only for him to draw his service pistol and fired several shots at her. The victim ran back inside the restaurant and the man followed her as he continued shooting. She was declared dead at the scene. 2 more people sustained gunshot injuries during the incident. Metro police officers who were patrolling the area witnessed the incident and reacted, and suspect was also shot and taken to hospital where he later succumbed to his injuries. The motive of the killing is unknown at this stage. However, domestic-related issues cannot be ruled out.
2 members of the police's VIP protection unit in the Northern Cape have been found guilty of theft in the Uppington Regional Court. The pair stumbled upon 60,000 rand at a mall in 2014 and instead of locating the owner, they hid it. They were arrested after attempting to send some of the money via a courier company to an address in Kimberley. Hawks spokesperson Debo Khotebe.
46-year-old Tebogo Noe and 48-year-old Michael Sibia, both members of SAP's VIP protection unit, were found guilty of theft by Uppington Regional Court. Both accused were each fined 30,000 rand, alternative 3 years imprisonment, suspended for 5 years. They were further declared unfit to possess a firearm.
And the World Health Organization says the humanitarian crisis caused by the civil war in Sudan is not getting the global attention it deserves, and race may be a factor. WHO Director Tedros Ghebreyesus, who just visited Sudan, says starvation was almost everywhere and that 12 million people had been displaced. He questioned why Sudan's issues are largely being ignored.
I think race is in the play here. That's what I feel now, because we see the pattern now. It's a pattern. So where is humanity? Of course, there is some support, but it's so limited. It's a token compared to the magnitude. I think it's nothing. So that's what I worry now. Is it really a race issue that nobody gives attention?
Recapping the top story this hour, the SA Union of Students has warned against students submitting fraudulent documents when applying for funding from NSFAS. For SAFM News, Kimudubi Makhaleme.
SAFM 104 to 107 nationwide.
This September, S3 brings you thought-provoking nature dockies that will change the way in which you view the world. Search for the Last Unicorn tells the story of the search for the northern white rhino, an animal that was officially declared extinct in 2018. Follow Saving the Survivors as they travel to South Sudan in the hope of giving us a second chance to save the northern white rhino. Airs Sunday the 22nd of September. Channel your inner activist with our selection of premium dockies Sundays at 5 p.m. only on S3. Open up. Hey, Ntwana, if I could, I'd fly to Dubai.
Here we go again.
First class, Exeni. Ngithi shwe. Get myself a V12 Beast and a mansion with Instagram-worthy views.
You don't even have Instagram.
Imagine seeing the city skyline from my bedroom, watching MasterChef SA while I have my very own MasterChef in my kitchen. Forget the queues at the cinema. I'd have one in my crib, Joe. I'm talking 7.1 surround sound and a 120-inch 8K TV whilst I'm sipping on some grapes. I'm talking luxury, Ntwana. What do you know about that? Let me school you, bro. Tune into Dubai, Buying the Dream, Saturdays at 8:30 p.m. on S3, and channel your inner luxury. Only on S3. Open up.
Standard Bank Group, the biggest bank in Africa by assets, in partnership with SOAS, will host the 4th Annual Climate Change Summit on the 1st October. This summit will host insightful conversations and various industry experts in charting Africa's course to net zero. The annual summit is one of Standard Bank's sustainability initiatives dedicated to driving growth on the African continent. Tune in to our SAFM Facebook page and be part of the conversation in shaping the future of Africa's energy transition. brought to you by Standard Bank Corporate and Investment Banking.
This Heritage Month, SAFM invites you to celebrate the rich tapestry of our nation's diverse cultures. From the vibrant beats of our traditional music to the flavors of our unique cuisines, every culture tells a story of strength, unity, and identity. We honor the heroes and heroines who laid down their lives for our freedom, reminding us that our shared heritage is what makes us strong. Together as one, we celebrate who we are because our culture is our identity. This Heritage Month, let's celebrate every culture, every story, and every voice.
The Talking Point with Cathy Mohlahlana. Weekdays, 9 a.m. till midday.
Ten after 11 o'clock, you're listening to The Talking Point. It's the final hour of the show this morning. And for this hour, we're zooming in to what is an important issue around the youth employment opportunities that have been created for young people. You'd remember that thousands of teaching assistants were deployed across the country. This was towards the end of the COVID-19 pandemic, but it was also just to help alleviate some of the pressure young people are facing, especially with the high jobless numbers. Now, Youth Capital has written to the Acting Director General of the Department of Employment and Labour and the Commissioner of the UIF on the disbursement of funding for the Basic Education Employment Initiative. It's calling for a release of the funds as has been provided for in Minister Enoch Godongwana's speech in his 2024 budget. Joining us for this conversation, Crystal Duncan-Williams is project lead at Youth Capital. Crystal, good morning.
Good morning, Cathy.
Thanks for your time this morning. Balisa Ramolefo is a campaigner at amandla.mobi. Good morning, Balisa.
Good morning, Cathy. Good morning to your listeners at home as well.
Viwe Mlenzana is the Acting Director General of Employment and Labour. Viwe, good morning to you.
Good morning, Cathy.
And Matthew Parks is the Parliamentary Coordinator at COSATU. Matthew, good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for having us. Good morning, colleagues.
All right. So we've got a full scope then of perspectives that will help us understand what the issue really is with the challenges being faced by this program. Crystal, let me begin with you. There's no doubt that the impact of these job opportunities created for young people has been significant. Yes, as Youth Capital, you've always bemoaned the fact that these are short-term job opportunities, but nonetheless, you've welcomed and also noted the fact that they are making a difference.
Absolutely, Cathy. You know, in a situation where we've seen youth unemployment numbers continue to rise over the last decade, now we know that amongst those young people, 8 in 10 unemployed young people have never had a job. And, you know, anybody who's spoken to a young unemployed person who is looking for work will always say they're stuck in this, in this chicken or egg situation where you need work experience to get a job, but you need a job to get work experience. And in that context, public employment programs are vital to give young people not only a first work experience, but, a foot into the labor market, access to networks that they wouldn't have had otherwise, which expose them to future opportunities, and also just putting some money into their pockets, which research has shown, particularly when we look at the BEI, has had an impact on young people's spending power within their communities, as well as their ability to grow a side hustle once the opportunity ends.
So what is happening now? What has triggered this letter that you've written to the department?
Well, we have obviously been following the story for a long time, and we were on your show, last year through our partnership with Amandla.mobi to get support for the continued funding of the Basic Education Employment Initiative, which wasn't going to be funded, according to the National Treasury. And then in February, we all celebrated that, the petition, which got over 25,000 signatures at that time and has continued to grow, we celebrated, we got the money, we got the funding. But the Minister of Finance in the budget speech, he said that the money would come from, we found out afterwards, would come from the UIF. And since then, we have had no money, no funds released from the Department of Labor. We have continued to follow the story, and Youth Capital, we don't set out to be antagonistic with government. We'd like to work with government, and so we kind of gave this grace period, knowing that it was election year. Things were up in the air. Things were not business as usual this year. But, in all of this time, we've been following up with the presidency, with, particularly those that run their presidential employment stimulus. And we know for a fact that there's been no written confirmation from the Department of Labor on the release of this funds. And meanwhile, we have thousands of learners across the country who have lost out on having extra support in classrooms. And we have thousands of young people who have lost out on their first work experience, even if it is a short-term opportunity. And so we initially wrote to the Department of Labor, to the UIF Commissioner, including the active DG, and we said, we can keep this out of the public space. Can you give us some clarity? Because we need to inform young people about what's going on. There's been no communication. And despite following up, no responses have been met. And so that's how we ended up here today, publicly saying what is happening. This is unacceptable. Young people are already bearing the brunt of unemployment. And even when funding has been secured through the National Treasury with, direct instructions to release this money, it doesn't seem to be forthcoming. So basically, where's the money and why is it taking so long?
Okay, thanks for that. Balisa, anything to add before I give the official an opportunity to respond?
Yes, so it is very unfortunate, right, that there has been silence, and I don't know whether to call it a complete disregard or just incompetence on the Department of Labor's side, but young people are falling for scams online, which speak about the assistant teachers program. So we need clarity, and we need to know what the way forward is, because we personally feel that it is a deliberate attempt to undermine hard-won victories by young people in the country who want a better life for themselves.
Viwe, you are aware of these concerns, especially due to the fact that you could well have received this letter by Youth Capital?
Well, good morning, Cathy, again. Good morning to the colleagues. First of all, thanks for inviting us to the show. I completely agree, by the way, with the previous speakers that we have a big challenge of unemployment in the country, and every effort must be made to try and address some of those challenges. Cathy, I am seized with this particular matter, and I actually started in this role last week, Monday, by the way, right? And by Thursday last week, I had convened a meeting of officials to get a briefing as to where we are on this particular matter. Safe to say that I have given instruction that we need to make sure that this matter is finalized in a week or two.
Okay. Give us a bit more detail into what is going to go into the process to ensure that indeed in the next 2 weeks this issue will be resolved, because the problem Youth Capital has raised is the fact that they've had little communication from your end around, number one, whether this matter is getting attention, and if it is, what those solutions being explored currently look like.
Well, so firstly, Cathy, I'm sure now it's a matter of public knowledge that there have been some transition in the department and the UIF. The commissioner of the UIF was suspended last week Friday, so we've got somebody new at the helm there. And as I said, myself, I started my role, playing this role last week Monday. So within 3 days of being in my role, I attended to this particular matter. And so I can also just confirm to you, the question, the listeners, that there is no in principle problem with this particular aspect. The monies, have been provisioned for. What I do at the moment is to make sure that the governance processes are sorted out. That's all that is happening.
And I really understand, viewer, where you're coming from, right? Because you sort of being thrown right into the deep end, while it should still be a time where you're getting to grips with this new position that you've come into. Crystal, any specific questions that you think viewer would need to answer for you at this current point?
Yeah, so I mean, again, to your point, Cathy, I hear that he's new within the department, but we have had this, because we aren't at Youth Capital kind of just going in guns blazing and going blindly. We have been, speaking to the department, the presidency in charge of rolling out the BEI, and we know that this promise of it's coming in 10 days, it's coming in the next 2 weeks, has been made multiple times between February and now, and just has never been realized. And forgive me, viewer, and as I understand that you knew, but the corruption and the issue around the lab program is again something where we, when the lab program was announced, Youth Capital asked for clarity. We said we'd love to engage on this program, and the department was just not forthcoming. I think, Cathy, I'm not sure if you remember, but we tried to get a panel going with you on that as well, and now it's come up that there were corruption issues, and it makes sense why nobody wanted to come forward. So I think the public confidence, and particularly the confidence of young people in the Department of Labour to carry through on this is, low, if at all, at this point. And I think to Cathy's point, we'd really like to know, how are you going to communicate with us at Youth Capital, even if it's just on email, to say what progress is happening week by week so we can keep an eye on things and we don't end up back on the show, 6 weeks from now without anything having changed.
All right, I'm going to put things on pause there for now. Matthew, I'll also give you a chance to come into this conversation on the other side of this break.
Catch the Tastemaster Junior this Tuesday evening at 7 on SABC2. It's another elimination week, and the bottom 6 are taken on a culinary trip back to school. For this challenge, they must create their dream lunchbox filled with nutritious yet delicious treats, and their creations are impressive. That's the Tastemaster Junior this Tuesday evening at 7. Repeat Wednesdays at 1 and Sundays at 4 p.m. Only on SABC2.
And we went on a water safari, and Mom spotted a hippo, and it said,
There is a place where you can see wonder and the wild, with breathtaking scenery and endless landscapes. Enjoy good food and embrace great taste.
And the next day we went to the reed dance. I saw the maidens handing over reeds to the mighty Zulu king, and the Zulu warriors chanting, Baye!
Explore all this and more in the magical Zulu Kingdom.
This message is brought to you by KZN Tourism and Film Authority.
Africa from Within follows the journey of our anchor presenters who travel to various locations in order to delve into the inner workings and untold stories of the unsung heroes. At its core, Africa from Within is all about grassroots storytelling and the showcasing of the conservation contributions of ordinary people to Africa. It aims to engage and entertain viewers, educate and promote conservation, and inspire viewers to value our natural heritage. Don't miss Africa from Within on SABC2 every Friday at 7 p.m.
The Talking Point with Cathy Mohlahlana. Weekdays, 9 a.m. till midday.
We continue the conversation on The Talking Point. We're following up on the job employment opportunities, in particular the teaching assistants that were deployed across the country, thousands of them. That program now in question as the status of the funds to facilitate that program seem to not have been deployed. We are in conversation with various guests. You've heard from Crystal, Palisa and Viwe. Matthew, I want to give you a chance to come in here too. These are really the sort of administrative bungles that should be avoided. Crystal says that from February, they've been getting promises that every week, these funds are going to be made available. It's now September. It's September now.
Hi, good morning. Thanks for this. I mean, first, that's the very concerning part. It's the first time we've had administrative glitches, and we really hope that government would move with much greater efficiency to address the issues. We've known about it for some time, and the part of the tragedy that it undermines a very good program, because now people are now thinking of the program as administrative issues as opposed to thinking about the positive aspects to it, which is about helping people enter the labor market to earn a salary, to get the skills and confidence they require to find longer-term employment, and to, again, the confidence, etc. When government doesn't manage these things properly, then people just simply remember the negative stories. And I think for us, these have kind of been critical programs. We can't sustain a country with a 70% youth unemployment rate, a 42% general unemployment rate. It really is a ticking time bomb. And we had actually been quite alarmed, besides this issue, Cathy, that over the past 2 budget years, government has continuously been cutting back on the Presidential Employment Program or stimulus, which funds the teaching assistants, from a peak of about 36 billion rand roughly to currently is about 9 billion rand. And that makes for us no sense whatsoever when we have such high unemployment rates, and we should really be treating unemployment as our single most critical national crisis, and be literally throwing everything we possibly can, not in a reckless way, but in a smart way, to kind of breaking its back. And I think for us it's been just quite alarming. When unemployment is rising, we've actually seen government being cutting the programs, and that for us just makes absolutely no sense. And we really hope that when NTBS in 5 weeks' time, that government actually begin to reverse that kind of cuts to the Presidential Employment Program, and in fact to see how can we expand it beyond just teaching assistants. It's been quite positively received, including by teachers' unions and classrooms, etc. But could we expand into other parts of the state, of the private sector, to really help provide a pathway for people to enter the labor market, because we just can't sustain a society where certain people just can't find work.
It does give off a sense of that government has been handling at least the administrative part of it in a very nonchalant way, because this is government. We should expect that government will communicate. We should expect that government will have clarity where there are programs of this nature and that affect so many thousands of young people across the country.
No, and sadly, I mean, we have these administrative challenges not just in this program, across the state. There is a real decline in the state capacity on so many different fronts. Whether it's local government struggling to pay municipal workers' salaries, whether it's the chaos of the post office, on just so many fronts, it is a real challenge. And the state can be fixed. We're convinced it can be fixed. We've seen with SARS, if you appoint competent management, you invest in the IT capacity, the infrastructure capacity, etc. If you fill critical vacancies, you can have a wonderful turnaround. SARS has gone from a very scary part situation a couple of years ago when it was badly under-collecting revenue under previous administration, previous leadership. Now with new leadership, filling vacancies, investing in IT, smart intelligence, is exceeding its targets. And we think if you take a similar approach, you can. And Home Affairs has they've included the Presidential Employment Stimulus under the digitization program. I think that's a wonderful example too, helping young people get the practical skills they would need to acquire to find employment afterwards. Because one of the major problems of the EPWP and CWP is that they just don't provide the skills and experience, etc. And as a consequence, we're then in a crisis where you're employing people, but they're just not resolving the issue.
All right. Thanks for that contribution, Matthew. Balisa, do you want to come in here as well?
Yes. So these programs have given young people an opportunity, right, to have a foot in the job market. We have less than 3 months before the school year ends. So it is very unfortunate that all we are hearing is excuses. And like you said, Cathy, there is a nonchalance in how this has been administered. Like, how is it that we keep hearing in unemployment speeches and unemployment solutions that we are prioritizing young people, but this program has not been rolled out? It makes absolutely no sense.
When we continue with this conversation, I want to find out what has been happening to the young people, especially those that were likely recruited then to be participants of this particular project. And viewer, I'll also give you a chance to respond to some of the issues that have been raised, because a lot of it really has to do with what has not been done administratively. And you are new, but perhaps you can tell us about how you plan then on dealing with some of these matters going forward, so that the next conversation we have really is about how the program is unfolding rather than some of the hurdles that are currently being experienced. It's edging towards 11:30, time for the latest news headlines. We'll continue with our guests after this.
Thank you very much, Cathy, and a very good morning. With the news headlines, Kimudupima Khalemele. The SA Union of Students has warned against students submitting fraudulent documents when applying for funding from NSFAS. The ANC will hold a memorial service for former Cabinet Minister Pravin Gordhan in Joburg this afternoon, and former U.S. President Donald Trump has spoken publicly for the first time since his assassination attempt on Sunday at his golf course in Florida. A full news update at the top of the hour.
This September, S3 brings you thought-provoking nature dockies that will change the way in which you view the world. Temperature Rising tells the story of three activists as they grapple with what thinking globally and acting locally means as they fight the barriers to climate action. Airs Sunday the 8th of September. Channel your inner activist with our selection of premium dockies Sundays at 5 p.m. only on S3. Open up.
20 outfits of the Premier League are back on the battlefield for another spectacular season, with ambitions to play the world's most competitive and compelling football.
Rodri! City 3! West Ham 1!
This is the massive fight for the ultimate glory.
I say no, is he going to try and beat him from inside his own arm? Oh, boys, it's Caicedo! I can't believe it! What a way to score your first Chelsea goal!
Experience the 2024-2025 Premier League season on Saturdays at 3:30 p.m. Live on SABC3 and at your fingertips on SABC Plus. Also available on sabcsport.com. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
Congratulations to Mzansi's latest Powerball winner, who won the life-changing jackpot of over 107 million rand on Friday. Play Powerball and Powerball Plus for 41 million rand in total estimated jackpots this Tuesday for your chance at winning millions. Buy your tickets now in-store on nationallottery.co.za, the mobile app, cell phone banking, or simply dial *120*7529# for USSD. Panda Pusha Play. Players must be 18 years or older. Play responsibly. Ituba is the proud operator of the National Lottery.
Across South Africa, online and on radio. SAFM, let's talk.
We continue the conversation on the talking point. We're zooming into the job opportunities for young people. Crystal Duncan Williams is project lead at Youth Capital. Balisa Ramolefo is campaigner at amandla.mobi. Viwe Mlenzana is acting director general of employment and labor. And Matthew Parks, parliamentary coordinator at COSATU. Viwe, let me give you a chance then to respond, number one, to what I think is really the plea that is coming through from these youth organizations around the state of limbo. Can they get updates on where the process is? Can they get updates on how soon then some of these funds will be available? I imagine that is also a message that they need to communicate with their constituency.
So, Cathy, first of all, I think I must just say that the frustration, the anger, and all of those emotions are understandable because we are dealing with a challenge of unemployment in this country that requires us to be nimble, that requires us to be effective in the manner that we respond to issues, that requires speed and responsiveness. So that is perfectly understandable. I do understand that particular frustration, and from my side, there's nothing to explain, there's nothing to justify. All that I can then do is to assure the colleagues that this matter has got my attention, and I'm giving it my attention, and I want to ensure that we have a resolution, not a resolution, an implementation or moving towards an implementation and the release of the money within the next week or two. The players that are required to make this effective have been identified. The disbursement or the project management company that will be effectively handling the fees has been identified. There's no difficulty there. All that needs to be done is to make sure that as we deal with, funds of this size, that we do not necessarily leave gaps that are going to come back and haunt us. We have proper governance that's built in so that we don't have other, matters, that will make us look bad because we did not do what is expected of us to perform. Now, unfortunately, obviously, things ought to have happened much quicker than they have happened, and they didn't for whatever reason that may have been. But, all that I can give comfort to is that this matter is going to be resolved very speedily within the next couple of weeks, as it were. And we will then obviously announce and communicate with the public as and when everything gets implemented. I obviously, understand the fact that we could have communicated better. I'm not sure why we didn't. Safe to say, Cathy and the colleagues, I'm here now. That's why I'm communicating.
Okay. Are you able to give us insight, Viwe? Because you say you've had these meetings with your officials that have had to give these updates. Where was the real issue? Where did things go wrong? What was the problem administratively that has resulted in us being where we are today?
Look, I think, in a nutshell, all right, the source of the funds is coming from the unemployment insurance, all right, fund. And traditionally, the unemployment insurance is there for a certain specific purpose. And in the main, that purpose is reskilling of former contributors to the fund and the scheme itself, with the aim of bringing them back into the mainstream economy in terms of them contributing again. Now, programs like these, they do fall in a bit of a gray area, whether they are part of what is contemplated by the Unemployment Insurance Fund in terms of its provisions in law, because the monies are not necessarily coming from Treasury. The money is coming from the Unemployment Insurance Fund. So we needed to make sure that we don't fall foul of any legal provisions as we try to do the right thing.
Crystal, for those learners that have been participants of this program previously, what has been the status so far? Because I know what they do is that they try to get new learners on the program every year, and that you're not recycling some of the participants. So for those that were set to be part of it this year, what has happened?
So because the presidency as well as the Department of Basic Education hadn't gotten written confirmation from the Department of Labour around when the money would be released, the DBE specifically hadn't started its recruitment process. So I know from talking to the presidency as well as our partners at SAU Start Mobi, where the recruitment happens, that the recruitment process didn't go ahead. But what then transpired, as Palesa has said, is that in the void of this communication, young people were expecting the call for the next round of teaching assistants to come out, as it has done sort of every 6 months or every 9 months since 2020. And so young people kept messaging us, and their kids, and they kept going to the Department of Basic Education because where else are they going to go, or showing up at schools and saying, what's happening? Like, you're supposed to be taking on the next round of participants, and nobody can communicate anything because, while we know that the money should be coming, if we don't actually have the money, we can't promise young people something that, might not happen. And so there's been this sort of void. And as Palesa said, part of our kind of urgency in drawing up this letter was really that young people are falling victims to scams. We know that this happens a lot, but it's even happened on the SAU Start Mobi app, a government app where there are, millions of young people signed up. And young people just being scammed, thinking that they're showing up for this teaching assistant role, only to find that it doesn't exist. So there's been a lot of disappointment and frustration from young people during the course of the last few months.
Matthew, it seems to me that, there's a need for greater synergy within ministries themselves, because it cannot be that the Department of Education is waiting for the Department of Labour to give an update. And I would think all it takes is a phone call between the various director generals in these departments, or even ministers, for that clarity to happen.
There is a need. At times, government works in silos. We've raised, for example, that we need to have a discussion around a possible single public employment program for government, because you've got a variety of different pockets here and here under different departments. The Department of Employment and Labour, who theoretically should be tasked with this, has got a very small employment services centre, very, very small. But the big public employment programs like EPWP falls under Public Works, Community Works program falls under COGTA, and the really critical one, which you hope to see kind of becoming the pace setter for all of them, the Presidential Promise Stimulus, kind of gets cascaded across different departments. Falls under the Presidency and Treasury a little bit, but then also other departments also have theirs, like basic education, home affairs, etc., etc. So we don't have uniform standards with regards to training, to who should be included, a pathway to hopefully find the graduates, so to speak, finding employment, even around the salary level. The Presidential Stimulus correctly is linked to the minimum wage. The EPWP and CWP is pegged at 55% of the minimum wage under the Minimum Wage Act. But in fact, they've been allowing for the last couple of years to actually that gap increase from 55% to 51%. So it doesn't look good. And you're right, Cathy. We need to have a discussion. So what we've raised is to start with government. We need to have a discussion about how can you kind of bring these ones together. How can you ensure that they achieve the same objective and that they really have add value? We do understand that you would need to have some variety within them, because some are really about social protection for people who may never find a job, to give them some sort of money and activity, etc. But others should be really geared at helping young people with their whole careers and lives ahead of them to enter the labor market as well, and people with different skills and backgrounds and opportunities. So there is a need, but we do need to have some coherence, and we do need to have a bit more of a focused approach to it, because right now it's just scattered, and we're not having the impact that the crisis demands we have.
All right. I'm going to come back to Palesa and Viwe in a moment. Nhlanhla, you're calling us from KZN. You have a question on this issue.
Good morning, my sister, and good morning to your guest. My question is more based on the Department of Labour, because we've been hearing the Department of Labour wanting to spend 5 billion and 20 billion for certain programs, and then we get to find such programs which haven't been funded. But those programs which they were seeking to benefit directly, they went on and they passed. So, what is the time frame of getting this program sorted out immediately? That's what we want, because our kids are being behind, and with so much unemployment, how are they helping to solve the issue of employment as if they are the head of employment in this country?
Okay. Nkanka, thanks for the question, and it's a good observation that you're making there around, of course, the fact that there have been all of these controversies at the UIF and some of its proposed programs, and if that is having an impact at all on a project like this. Viwe?
Well, look, I think, I think it's a very interesting point and a very good point in that there have, of course, been these issues that have been hogging the public domain. And it is precisely for that reason that we want to make sure that we don't continue that discourse. But you've got to balance that, obviously, with speed and acuity, right? And I understand, as I indicated, that people would be frustrated about these things because the lived reality is that people are struggling out there. And to an extent that there are programs that seek to alleviate the challenges of poverty out there, we should be prioritizing those. So it is for that reason, of course, that, under this administration, we are actually giving priority to such aspects. So the issue related to challenges around perceived corruption or are real issues in a way, because we have had to deal with aspects as early as last week related to such matters. So we've got to make sure that whatever we do not create another problem by trying to resolve, one other. So just in terms of the timelines that have been raised, right, around, for instance, Ntlanhla makes the point around our labor activation program, and that we went out and indicated that we are obviously going to be training and employing an X number of potential young people. That program is very much alive. All right, what had to happen was to make sure that before we spend, hard-earned money and money that comes from, the workers of this country, we needed to make sure that the partners who would be executing these particular programs have the right capacity and capability to do what they are suggesting that they will be doing.
Okay.
So within the next couple of days, we'll be updating the public around that.
All right. Balisa, very briefly, you do the recruitment of these young people, so you have an idea of how long it takes. If what the acting DG is saying is anything to go by, in 2 weeks' time, and we will follow up with him, by the way, in 2 weeks' time, if the funding matter is resolved in 2 weeks' time, realistically, when are these projects likely to begin? Briefly for me.
Sorry, Cathy. So we don't do the recruitment, but we basically work on the ground with these young people who have been affected by this incompetence by the Department of Labor. So
you wouldn't have an indication whether this would be a project that will still be implemented this year, or if then it falls into 2025?
So by the way things are looking, if it was to be implemented right now, then definitely it would have to overlap into 2025, because we only have 3 months, like I mentioned earlier, left of the school year. So,
Okay. We'll leave it there. Let me thank you all for coming onto the show. You heard the commitments from the Department of Employment and Labour. We'll be holding them to it in terms of providing clarity on this issue. Thank you all for tuning in. As always, it has been a pleasure. Coming up next, the book reading.
The book reading. Please note that the views expressed in this book are not that of the station. Listeners' discretion is advised. SAFM presents another episode of A Life of Purpose, written by Luvuyo Wochela and Lumkile Wiseman Kuhlu. The reader is Lerato Velase.
Although he was still disappointed that he would not be studying for an economics honors degree, he accepted and understood the teaching mandate with enthusiasm. He regarded the offer from his department as an honor, which he had to embrace. While tackling the challenge of teaching business management in 1971, he decided to take stock and reflect on the direction of his career. It was increasingly clear to him that his future in economics was fading unless he completed an honors degree in economics. Professor Smith's reluctance to help him move in that direction focused his mind on attempting to accomplish what had yet to be achieved in the African community. He had heard on numerous occasions, while a student, that some people had struggled but could not succeed in qualifying as chartered accountants. He held several meetings with Professor van Eeden about enrollment as an articled clerk with an accounting and auditing firm. There were still tough challenges ahead for him as he departed from Fort Hare at the end of the 1971 academic year. The first African chartered accountant in the country in 1972 to 1976. Determination, self-control, and a firm, positive outlook, the qualities that had driven Wiseman's vision from his early years, became even more important after he attained his first degree at the University of Fort Hare. I realized quite early that my success in life were dependent on the choices I make, how disciplined I am, and on how hard I work to achieve my goals. He left his lectureship at Fort Hare at the end of 1971 to serve articles in accounting. What he had already achieved and what had challenges lay ahead at the beginning of 1972, only he could truly comprehend. His younger brother, Sonwabiso, who held a clerical position in Umtata at the time, makes the point that many people in their home village and in their neighboring areas had tried with little success to understand the meaning of a BCom degree. It was more common in African communities to find a person who has a degree in humanities, and very little was known about accountancy as a vocation. Moreover, they could not understand why Wiseman still had to undertake further training in his profession when he had already spent 4 years of study at university. Sonwabiso himself was astonished when he realized how parsimoniously his brother was forced to live when he visited him in Butterworth during the first months of 1972. I was a senior clerk with a matric qualification, working in Umtata, and I felt content then with the life I lived, and I thought I earned enough to cover most of my needs. When I looked at my brother's rented room and his possessions, during one of my visits to him in Butterworth, he did not seem to be having the luxuries I had as a clerk, and I was a bit surprised because he had just received Isdanga, a degree. But what was special with him was he had his dignity, wayenesidima, and he had seemed to command respect, ehlonishwa, from the people around him. More crucially, he seemed to know exactly what he wanted to attain and was really determined to achieve that. Certainly, Wiseman had made up his mind about what he intended to do at the start of 1972 and had braced himself for another momentous task. This chapter outlines the next challenging phase of his life in 2 parts. The first details his early practice as an articled clerk in Umtata and Butterworth from 1972 to 1974, a period characterized by his growing understanding of the business world and the financial pursuits of these towns and their outlying areas. Enrolled on a part-time basis for other commercial courses with UNISA before he could even write the examinations controlled by the Public Accountants and Audit Board, PAAB, he went through 3 years of altering between pain and elation. That period culminated in his marriage to Hazel Mohlahlana. The last part of the chapter sketches out the tough road to completing the certificate in theory and accountancy, CTA, the equivalent of an honours degree in accounting with the University of Cape Town during 1975, and concludes when he finally went through the PAAB examinations and thus became the first African chartered accountant in the country. Serving articles and studying at UNISA, 1972 to 1974. Mr. van Eerden had in 1971 arranged for an appropriate firm of the registered accountants to admit Wiseman for practical training while he was simultaneously studying so that he could complete his CTA and sit for the PAAB examinations 4 years later. At the time, those aspiring to qualify as chartered accountants could only obtain their business or practical training with a company of approved registered accountants and auditors who practiced legally. A trainee accountant would be assigned to a principal, who by rule was also a qualified chartered accountant. The principal would monitor and advise the apprentice and teach him or her the essential requirements of the job. Besides the required aptitude for the mathematics and ability to analyze, contrast, evaluate, and interpret figures and facts, other requirements were centered on charter and sound values, on the ability to work accurately and on having good communication skills, as well as honesty, shrewdness, fortitude, and excellent judgment. Wiseman had already exhibited some of these qualities, but he was well aware that he needed to join a well-established firm for his articles. For him, it was not only about going through the motions of a training program. He was also keen to build on his natural talent, the ability to work accurately and with sound judgment in order to become a successful chartered accountant. The burning desire for success and to prove wrong those who had betrayed him during his school years at Lovedale was still there. On my part, I really felt I could prove to myself and those youngsters who thought they were cleverer than me, some who had completed their degrees 3 years earlier, that I was going to come up with something much better that will attest not only to myself, but to the African people and the rest of the world. In January 1972, he began his articles and joined the Pretoria-based chartered accountants Hook, Vihan and Cross. At that time, Hook, Vihan and Cross was a thriving firm that had partnerships and also ran operations in different parts of South Africa. Wiseman worked under Joel Lategan, his supervisor, from 1972. Lategan was a partner at Hook, Vihan and Cross, actively auditing in the Ciskei and the border areas in and around King Williamstown and East London, as well as the Transkei, especially Butterworth and Umtata. The firm's foremost client in the Transkei was the XDC, which had taken over a number of businesses throughout the area by 1970. By 1972, almost 10 years into Transkei's self-government, it had become clear that the XDC was carrying the major responsibility for the economic development of the fledgling homeland. Its main activity then was the buying out of white businesses and transferring these to Africans, a process that would accelerate when Transkei approached its independence in 1976. At the beginning of 1972, 420 white traders, several bottle stores, over 18 garages, and 3 hotels had been bought out. The larger concessions of these were based in Butterworth and Umtata. Overall, there were older and newer, bigger and smaller enterprises, and some of these were the initiatives of the XDC. They included the Transkei construction and the electric units that had also grown rapidly within a section of the XDC's estate since the late 1960s. The corporation possessed blocks of flats in Umtata, which were rented to government employees, and in Butterworth, it had constructed well over 100 houses for white personnel employed in the new enterprises. Older companies also continued to flourish. Hillman Weavers of Umtata employed 170 African women and processed 20,000 kilograms of mohair a year. The historical maize roll mill in Butterworth was expanding and also offering employment. In this town, the Minister of Bantu Administration and Development had opened a bag factory, Transkei Textile and Plastics Pty Ltd, which by mid-1971 was a capital cost enterprise of more than 2.9 million, employing 35 white managerial and technical staff and more than 400 Africans, a figure that would increase to 1,000 by 1972. Wiseman spent much time working on the books and financial records of the XDC and the many companies it controlled. Whilst he worked inexorably during office hours, he also had UNISA courses to complete. Despite the demanding schedule, he coped well with his UNISA courses, but had problems with Introduction to Data Processing, a course entailing an introduction to computer technology. Up to that stage, he had never been exposed to these gadgets, let alone work with one. Now he had to imagine the flow of documents in this technological device, being informed about inputs, the processing and the outputs, having to understand the controls and the imagination of all that action and its related outflows was difficult for him.
That was another episode of A Life of Purpose, second edition, written by Luvuyo Wochela and Lumkile Wiseman Kuhlu. The book is available online on www.kmmr.co.za, KMMR Publishers, and in all leading bookstores countrywide. It is broadcast on SAFM at 11:45 Monday to Thursday on The Talking Point. It is produced for the station by Vovi Patala, read by Lerato Mvelase, technical production Wiseman Manqele and Nanda Khoza.
SAFM 104 to 107 nationwide.
It's 12 o'clock. It's Tuesday, the 17th of September 2024. Very warm welcome to Updated Noon here on SAFM. Leading the conversation for the next hour, I'm Sakina Kamwendo. Coming up on today's show,
the report before the department indicates that the inmate collapsed and was declared dead by the doctor on the 15th of September 2024.
Allegations that an inmate was tortured to death inside a cell at the G4S in Mangaung.
How am I going to watch them when I'm in CMAX, when I'm incarcerated? And the fact that I have no resources to access those evidence. And the application is based on the following. But Your Honor, you have thrown my application out of court without me giving you background.
Convicted murderer and rapist Thabo Bester has lodged an application in the High Court in Pretoria to access a laptop in prison. Coming up in sport,
Big Boys in Pretoria start their premiership campaign today. Plenty of football across the globe, and we hear from the Springboks in Argentina.
Details in the second half of the show with John Chirika. Please share your views with us. You can SMS us on 41391, charge at R150 per SMS. You can also write to us via X or Facebook, our handle at SABC News_radio, or you can send a voice note to 08269239909. Well, these and more stories coming up on this Tuesday edition of Updated Noon. First, though, here's the latest news with Mudupi Makhalimele.
Thank you very much, Sakina. The top stories at midday. Bester seeks access to his laptop in prison, and a student union warns against NSFAS fraud. A very good afternoon. The High Court in Pretoria is hearing an urgent application by convicted murderer and rapist Thabo Bester requesting access to a laptop in prison. Bester believes that this will help him prepare for his upcoming deportation case. He's currently facing charges of escaping from prison in Bloemfontein in May 2022. He then fled to Tanzania with his girlfriend, Dr. Nandipha Makutumana. They were arrested and deported to South Africa. Bester told the court that his application was filed late because his attorney's laptop was stolen before they could file.
My assisting attorney to do correspondence, her laptop and cell phone was stolen at the prison. She was not able to file. There's a case number in everything. The correctional services are fully aware of this fact. And I am saying that this should not be the case. I should not be struggling to access this court. I should not have to come to this court to ask for a basic right, because it is a guarantee through the Constitution that we are all equal. I do not feel equal at this stage.
The Road Traffic Management Corporation, RTMC, says another licensing examiner has been arrested in connection with the irregular issuing of driver's licenses and bribery in Mpumalanga. Yesterday, the Hawks arrested 13 licensing officers and one driving school operator, following allegations that a driving school owner colluded with licensing officers in issuing learners and driver's licenses to applicants without being tested in exchange for a hefty sum of cash. RTMC spokesperson Simon Zwane.
All the suspects are going to face charges of fraud, corruption, and contravention of National Road Traffic Act. And they will also be facing consequences departmentally, where they stand to lose their employment. So the two consequences is jail time because of the criminal prosecution, and then loss of employment because of departmental disciplinary actions.
The SA Union of Students has warned against their students submitting fraudulent documents when applying for funding from NSFAS. This follows the postponement of the 2025 NSFAS applications to Friday this week after concerns raised by student organizations at universities, TVET colleges, and institutional governance structures. The union's Lukhanyo Daweti has urged students to submit all the required documents to avoid delays to access tuition fees.
But we would like to make a very serious plea to all our students and learners to ensure that when they apply, they ensure that they are open as possible, because we have picked up that what have caused the backlog when we're following up with the cases at NSFAS is that some of our own brothers and sisters, the documentations that they have submitted is not corresponding.
The ANC will hold a memorial service for former Cabinet Minister Pravin Gordhan in Joburg this afternoon. It will take place at the Johannesburg City Hall and is expected to begin at 4 p.m. Gordhan, who was 75, passed away last Friday in hospital after a battle with cancer. Sibahle Mota reports.
Gordhan, who had a short stay in hospital, was surrounded by his family, friends and comrades at the time of his passing. Since then, tributes have been pouring in for the former Public Enterprises Minister, who has been hailed for his fight against corruption. Gordhan has been granted a special official funeral category 2 declared by President Cyril Ramaphosa. The funeral will take place at the Inkosi Luthuli International Convention Center in Durban, KwaZulu-Natal on Thursday. It will then be followed by a private cremation. I am Sibahle Mota in Johannesburg.
And former U.S. President Donald Trump has spoken publicly for the first time since his assassination attempt on Sunday at his golf course in Florida. At a campaign rally in Michigan, he commended President Joe Biden for expressing relief that he wasn't harmed during a second assassination attempt, but he went on to claim that Democrats were using provocative language that was inspiring people to try to kill him. The Democratic Party's Robin Swanson accused Trump of exploiting the incident.
We all disavow this kind of political violence. Once again, Trump is making absurd claims and using things for political points. And the first attempt on his life was by a registered Republican, and this last attempt on his life was on the grounds of Mar-a-Lago, and it was by somebody who had voted for him in 2016. So his bizarre conspiracy theories that this is somehow related to Democrats just hold no water.
The top story this hour, the High Court in Pretoria is hearing an application by convicted murderer and rapist Thabo Bester requesting access to a laptop in prison. Back to you, SK. For SAFM News, Kimudupi Makhalemele.
Update at noon with Sakina Kamwendo, midday to 1 p.m. Update at noon with Sakina Kamwendo.
Well, thanks so much, Madupi. Good afternoon, everybody. It's 7 minutes after 12. Thanks so much for joining us here on Update at Noon. Let's start by taking a quick look at our diary this afternoon. So we're going to take a look at allegations that prison warders at G4S in Mangaung tortured an inmate to death and inside a cell. Now, An inmate has informed SABC News that the prisoner was tortured for about 30 minutes in his cell. They say that they could hear the screams. A body was then brought out of the cell on a stretcher while other inmates were queuing for roll call. So police were called in, and the inmate was taken to hospital, upon which we understand he may have succumbed. But we are actually going to follow up to find out exactly what the details are. As we understand it at this time, the inmate was allegedly a Danish national and gun dealer in Bloemfontein. So these are the allegations of what was told to us. So we are going to follow up with correctional services and, of course, with our reporter, just to find out what the actual situation is there. Also, just looking at what's happening in Parliament. So quite a bit going on in Parliament. The Auditor General will be briefing SCOPA on the financial performances of PRASA and SAA. SAA, we understand, has again failed to provide financial audit statements. PRASA, they will be briefing the Portfolio Committee on their corporate plan and following a 7 billion rand financial loss. And then the progress report by the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development and the National Prosecuting Authority on TRC matters, and these matters include the payment to beneficiaries. It's a briefing by Parliamentary Legal Services on the processing of the protection of state information as well. Zaleen Merrington watching that one for us. And still in Parliament, there's also a briefing by the Minister of Home Affairs and the policy on or white paper on citizenship, immigration and refugee protection. That's a briefing by the Minister of Home Affairs, and also the implementation of the Vulindlela recommendations on aspects related to that department. Then the Social Development Department in KZN, through the MEC there, sharing the findings of an investigation on alleged abuse of children and maladministration at the Aryan Benevolent Home in Chatsworth. Now, this is a home that is fully funded by the KZN Department of Social Development, houses about 102 children between the ages of 11 and 7. And we're going to find out exactly what happened there and what the findings were, the MEC doing that particular briefing. So quite a lot happening in the courts as well. We'll try and see how much of all of this we can bring you up to speed with.
Update at noon, midday to 1 p.m.
And we start in the Free State. Correctional Services Department has confirmed the death of Danish national Peter Fredericks at the Mangaung Correctional Centre in the Free State. Now, Fredericks was serving 2 life terms at the facility after being found guilty of rape and conspiracy to commit murder back in 2018. Now, he was first arrested in September 2015 after 21 female genitalia were found in his home in a freezer. I think some of you may remember that case. Now, spokesperson for the Correctional Services Department, Singabako Ngumalo, explains.
The Department of Correctional Services confirmed having received a death notice report of inmate Peter Frederiksen, incarcerated at Mangaung Correctional